Members of the public. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Councilors Moore and Thompson, that the special meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of November 25th, 2024 come to order at 5 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. And I do have Deputy Cabral and Councilor Alexander with us. However, they are rebooting. Disclosures of pecuniary interest, Council?
I have to step out.
Not seeing any. If Manager Bernie is available, we have some technical issues on some computers, but otherwise we will move on now to our presentation from MPAC. And if we could have Ms. LaFrance just come forward to the microphones here. And if you can pull them closely to you, sometimes it's difficult to hear, and we will have our deputy clerk pull your. And there we are. So if you just want to next slide us through this, we can do that. Welcome.
At MPAC, we are Ontario's property experts. Our job is to assess and classify more than 5.6 million properties across Ontario worth a combined value of more than $3 trillion. Every municipality uses our assessments to make informed decisions about their community, including the distribution of property taxes. There are 4 key players in Ontario's property assessment taxation system, and all have a different role and interest in this process. The provincial government, specifically the Ministry of Finance, is responsible for setting assessment and taxation legislation as well as policies, including the valuation date. They also determine the education property tax rate. There is also an independent body that adjudicates appeals of MPAC's assessed values, the Assessment Review Board. MPAC is an independent, not-for-profit corporation funded by all Ontario municipalities. Our role is to accurately assess and classify all properties in Ontario. We do this in compliance with the Assessment Act and regulations set by the Government of Ontario. We are accountable to the province, municipalities, and property taxpayers of Ontario through a board of directors that is comprised of provincial, municipal, and taxpayer representatives appointed by the Minister of Finance. Municipalities determine their budget requirements, set tax rates, and collect property taxes to pay for municipal services. Municipalities use MPAC's assessments and the established tax rates to distribute their tax requirement to ratepayers. And finally, property owners. They pay the property tax bill and help set market value through ongoing property purchases and sales. Next slide, please. As you can imagine, maintaining Ontario's property database is very important. Property data is continuously updated so that municipal records are accurate when our municipal stakeholders are making important tax decisions. Maintaining Ontario's property database includes inspecting and assessing new construction, additions, and renovations promptly, responding to property owner inquiries and working to help them understand their assessment, and also supporting municipalities by offering Municipal Connect, which is a system where our municipal stakeholders can obtain the primary source of assessment-related information. We have important statutory duties, such as handling requests for reconsiderations and maintaining people data by tracking school support for over 5.6 million properties. Next slide, please. Monitoring the market and assessing newly built and renovated properties are things we do every day to keep our data current. Ontario's property tax system is based on everyone paying their portion of what it costs to deliver community services. To do this, all properties are assigned a value at a common valuation date. The valuation date for the most recent assessment update, which took effect in 2017, was January 1st of 2016. This date is provided by the Ministry of Finance. The reassessment that was scheduled to occur in 2020 was postponed by the province to provide stability and certainty to Ontarians and to enable municipalities to focus on responding to the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Ministry of Finance is doing a system-level review of the property assessment and taxation system. And as part of this process, the province has committed to pausing a province-wide reassessment until the review concludes. At this point in time, we do not have the next valuation date, and we will find out once the Ministry of Finance makes an announcement. The current value assessment is market value at the point in time, so at the legislated date. It's the price that a property might reasonably be expected to sell for if sold by a willing seller and a willing buyer after appropriate time and exposure on an open market. Next slide, please. So let's talk briefly about valuation. In Ontario, there are 3 industry-wide standardized approaches to valuing properties. The first of these approaches is the direct comparison approach, which is used primarily for residential properties, condominiums, and vacant land. With this approach, we analyze sales of comparable properties that were sold for a similar or identical use as the property to be valued to provide an indication of value. It's also important that only valid open market transactions are used in this analysis. Then we have the income approach. This is used for industrial malls, office buildings, and shopping centers. With income-producing properties, the ability to earn revenue is directly tied to its current value. To value these properties, we need to determine how much revenue it could generate as well as the sale price. To clarify, it's not the revenue being generated by the occupant, but rather the rent that the occupant is paying the landlord that we use to value properties with this approach. And lastly, the cost approach, which is typically used for general purpose industrial properties, small retail, and warehousing, just to name a few. This approach is used when a property type is unique and rarely sold on the open market, as we can't rely either on the direct comparison or the income approaches to determine its value due to a lack of data. The cost approach is a 3-step process. First, we calculate the cost of replacing the buildings and the structures and other accessible fixtures on the land. Then we apply a deduction for depreciation on all structures due to age. And lastly, we add the value of the land to produce the overall valuation. Next slide, please. So when we're looking at the valuation of a residential home, although our analysis tool looks at over 200 factors, the 5 factors on the screen here make up approximately 85% of a home's value. They include the location, the lot dimensions, exterior square footage, the quality of construction of the home, and the age of the property, which gets adjusted for any renovations or additions that have occurred. Next slide, please. So what draws our attention to a property? It's typically one of the following things. There's a market sale of the property. There's a request from a municipality or a property owner, or there's a request for reconsideration or appeal on the property. And probably the number one is through a building permit. So MPAC's role is to take building permits and turn them into assessment. Our municipal stakeholders rely on our assessments to levy property tax. So the sooner MPAC can deliver assessment, the sooner municipalities can realize the new revenue. Next slide, please. So after we assess a property or change in assessment, we mail a property assessment notice to the property owner. And sometimes property owners don't agree with their assessed value. And they may connect with you to let you know that they disagree with our assessments. But it's important to remember that property assessments are not taxation. So if you do get an inquiry, there are a few things you can do to help us by asking the property owner a few questions. First, you can ask them if they could have sold their property on January 1st of 2016 for the assessed value. Next, if they have visited About My Property to review the information we have on file regarding their property to ensure that data is correct. And they can also use About My Property to conduct comparable research on assessment of other properties in their neighborhood. And lastly, if an owner still disagrees with their property assessment, they can file a request for reconsideration and we will review the property free of charge. And they do also have the option to file an appeal with the Assessment Review Board. And the fastest way to start this review is for property owners to log on to aboutmyproperty.ca and they can file through there, but they can also file on mpac.ca. Next slide, please. So let's spend a moment to address the relationship between property taxes and assessment. Assessments distribute taxes. They do not determine the taxes paid. When a province-wide assessment update occurs, the most important factor is not how much the assessed value of a property has changed, but rather how the assessed value has changed relative to the average change in class in that community. Next slide, please. So we understand that property assessment can be complex, and we hear that from municipalities and property owners. So that's why we've been communicating with property owners and Ontarians more than ever to help them out, to help them understand property assessment and taxation system, to learn more about who we are, and to easily find the information and resources that they need. From social media campaigns to educational videos to our new first-time homebuyers hub, where new property owners can access information to help them navigate property assessment and taxation system. We continue to focus our efforts on providing helpful and easy to understand resources directly to property owners and municipalities to help you answer property owner questions. Next slide, please. So meeting with our municipal partners is crucial to build strong relationships and understand the communities that we serve. MPAC has participated in over 1,800 municipal engagements annually. We manage over 18,000 municipal inquiries, which are the day-to-day business requests and activities that we undertake to support our municipal partners. And we also have a digital toolkit available on mpac.ca, which can help municipalities, including elected officials like yourselves, mitigate misinformation and provide support and resources to inform property owners. Next slide, please. And don't hesitate to reach out if you do have any questions, even after the fact. There's my contact information as well as Lynn Cunningham's on the screen. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you, Ms. LaFrance. At this time, I can turn to members of council for any comments or questions. Councillor Thompson?
Well, thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you, Ms. LaFrance and Ms. Cunningham for coming. Would also like to thank Councillor Moore. I think it was a great idea that she had that she mentioned last week to see if you can come earlier. She has the power. I think it was Wednesday that she asked, and here you are. So just a couple of questions that I have. I've tried to really understand the process. You mentioned misinformation. I know there's a lot of it out there in the public, and you must deal with a lot of that. And some residents have a lot of anxiety, understandable if they think that once they're reassessed, their taxes are going to triple. And I think it's important that I understand, because I don't want to add to that anxiety when a resident calls me. So just a couple of questions. Can you just in layman terms, just explain how the assessment works when it's vacant property, and specifically a residential lot compared to a commercial lot? How are they assessed the same? Are they assessed differently? Are there different rules?
Ms. LaFrance?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Collin, through you to Councillor Thompson. So vacant land properties, they're assessed using our direct comparison approach. And when we do the direct comparison approach, we'll compare sales of similar properties. So for example, residential vacant land, we'll compare that to sales of other residential vacant land. And then similar to that, commercial vacant land, we'll compare it to sales of commercial vacant land and whatnot. So we're looking at that specific property type.
Okay, so follow on. So that sounds pretty simple. So it's just a real comparison to other vacant properties, very similar. It doesn't have anything to do with the amount of services they get or anything like that.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Thompson. We do take note of all the variables that the property has. So servicing, we'll record if this particular property has servicing versus another one not having service, and that does get accounted for in their assessment.
Okay, one last question.
That's
So again, through the chair to Ms. LaFrance, you had mentioned that one of the reasons we haven't had a reassessment since 2016 is because the province is undergoing a review of the system. Can you give us any idea as to why they're reviewing it, or do they think there's something wrong with the system? Are they trying to improve the system, or have they given you any information about the review?
rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, rock, paper, scissors. It's a fulsome review of the overall system. It's not just with MPAC. They're looking for things that they can make improvements on always. It's, you know, they're at the table with us. They come out to our office to meet with us. They also meet with municipalities. They're hearing voices from people of what changes are required. So they just want to do everything all at once and then come to us. Now, you've probably heard in the FER, the recent economic statement, there was a couple of things that were made mention of, and they come in the form of slight changes to us. But as they roll out the decisions and more changes will be coming out to you to let you know when and if decisions are made.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, council? Councillor Moore?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And thank you for coming on such short notice. I do appreciate it. I wanted to ask about farm property. When you're comparing farm properties, do you use the direct comparison approach and sort of, because they are income generating, do you take their income into consideration, or are they more residential?
Ms. LaFrance?
Terms are done on cost.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Moore. Farms are assessed on the cost approach. So that's where we take the value of the structures, how much it would cost to rebuild that structure, less depreciation for the age of the structure, and then we add the land value.
Hello. Land.
Follow on?
If I could just ask, so even though they are a business, legitimately so, you don't take into consideration the income that they generate through their chicken sales, or
No,
Oh.
not for assessment purposes. no.
not for assessment purposes? Okay. Also, could you then speak to the secondary suites and how that affects the MPAC assessment?
Yes.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Moore. So for a secondary suite, that could be a separate structure on a property, or potentially there's a basement apartment. We do account for those. For example, if there's a basement apartment, we do have that recorded as it has a separate kitchen as a basement apartment. And then if there is a secondary dwelling, that is like having two dwellings on one property. So we do assess that secondary dwelling the same as we would the main dwelling.
Follow on?
Sorry. So I'm specifically speaking to the benefit of having the secondary suite on your property for the MPAC assessment reduction. That's what I'm asking about.
So
The seniors program. I'm not sure what you call it, but
for the seniors and disabled exemption.
yes.
Oh, okay. So if there is a specially built structure for a senior or persons with a disability, they can apply and we can review to see if they qualify for the seniors and disabled exemption. And that some of the qualifications off the top of my head, the structure does have to be built for them to accommodate them. And if they weren't able to have the structure accommodated for them, they would have to live in a location that would assist them. So that is one of the qualifications. If it's a new build, we would look at the value of that structure, and that would be reviewed for part of the exemption. If it's in a renovation to the main structure, it's a certain percentage of the value of the main structure that could qualify. Each will have a full review at MPAC though, to see what qualifies for an exemption.
Sorry. Thank you. So is that something that you can take back for part of the review if at all you're asked for input? And that when people do build secondary dwellings where, you know, we recognize housing shortages exist and we're trying to find creative ways to have people be independent, that they're not then assessed at a fully second dwelling, you know, that there is some sort of recognition that, you know, you're still using the same property, in some cases still the same services, but, you know, not at the full MPAC rate because you can't sell it like you would another home. Anyway, just my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was a lot of discussion about having the secondary suites. You're essentially bringing a dependent, whether it's a young child starting off or an adult or a parent moving back to your home. They essentially become a dependent. And I believe there was an argument with the senior and disability category versus dependent category. And if they are dependent on you, it still doesn't qualify them for the senior and disability portion of it. So I think that that's a lot of it, because I think that there are a lot of people in Springwater who do happen to have a lot of space where they are able to create our ARUs. And while the people that are occupying them are dependent on the original homeowner, they don't qualify for the programs that are out there. So I think that might be the comment. I also wanted to circle back to the comments made on income based for agricultural units. And I just want to be clear that when MPAC does an evaluation of a commercial or home-based residential, income to that property, is that ever considered as part of the evaluation?
So just to repeat your question, is income for farms ever involved in the assessment?
That is correct.
Okay. So in order for a property to qualify as farm, there are certain things they would need to show to qualify as a farm property. However, that data is not used directly in coming up with the assessed value of that property.
And I'm just going to ask for so again, for clarification, I'm not talking about the OFA 7,500 a year
Oh,
value.
That's
I'm talking about if one farm makes 100 grand a year and one farm makes 200 grand a year, that does not place impact. Just as if one commercial property makes X and another commercial property, the income or the profit generated to the individual property has no impact on their assessed value.
That is correct. We
Thank
look
you.
at other things such as soil class and quality and
Yes.
and
Thank
other
you for that.
variables.
Any further questions, council? No. Well, we had your video presented to us this year and last year, so that's been very beneficial, and I'm hoping that we can get that back out. I agree with Councillor Thompson that we do need to alleviate some concerns, because I had those concerns, and again, the concern is I understand why there was no reevaluation in 2020, but we're patiently awaiting. So thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
Yeah. And please send me an email too if you think of something else after or need more clarification. We'd be happy to help.
Thank you. This time, we will move on to our 2025-26 draft budget, and we will move on to our prioritized programs, and I will now call upon Director Bedard.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And while we're waiting for the presentation to pull up, just want to share my appreciation for Ms. LaFrance and Ms. Cunningham making it in on short notice. I don't know if they heard, but you know, that was very much appreciated. We could move to the next slide, please. So before we move into discussion on 2025 proposed program changes, I just wanted to provide council with a recap in relation to the prioritization of program changes as they relate to the November 4th council resolution. Program changes were prioritized based on several factors, of which 3 are listed on this slide for your consideration. These factors or criteria, first and foremost, included the potential impact on service delivery. The list of criteria also included if the program change had revenue generating capability. Lastly, the list of criteria included the magnitude the program change would have on addressing current and future growth requirements. With this criteria in mind, the township's proposed 2025 program changes have been prioritized for council's consideration over the next 2 slides. Next slide, please. Program changes were previously listed in the 2025 budget in alphabetical order by department. This slide and the next slide now list program changes in order of prioritization as determined by the township's senior leadership team. The list of program changes encompass the collective needs in order of magnitude that the leadership team feels the township requires to move forward. This information relating to prioritization of program changes is being presented for council's consideration when evaluating the merits of each program change, of which are included as separate and individual resolutions on tonight's agenda. Next slide, please. As demonstrated specifically on this slide, and also visually on this slide as well, where one program change was previously indicated in the budget book for multiple positions, the program change has now been split into individual positions upon prioritization. The draft budget book contains a program change for 2 Operator 1 positions within the Recreation, Parks, and Facilities Department. However, after prioritization, the Operator 1 program change has now been split out individually, and you can see this split out specifically on this slide as the position appears twice, both at the top and the middle of the list. And again, it appears twice because the original ask of 2 positions has now been split out into individual positions. The same process was used for the equipment operator position within Public Works. And this program change, when split out, is now reflected both on this slide and the previous slide. This split out and prioritization better reflects the needs of the township when compared amongst all program changes before council this evening. With that said, Mayor Coghlan, this concludes my presentation, and staff are available to speak to each program change should council wish staff to do so.
Thank you, Director Bedard. Council, if there are any general questions about the process this evening or the request as a whole? If not, we do have each individual request broken out into an individual resolution, so we can talk about it at that time. But if there's something all encompassing that you wish to have addressed at this time, would be appropriate. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan. I apologize. It was probably listed, but are these figures that we see here, they are for a 12-month period, I would take it, or are they prorated in any way, shape, or form?
Director Bedard.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan, and through you to Deputy Cabral. The positions are prorated as of 10 months of 12 months. So there's that proration. The full amount of the program change is included at the bottom of each program change form in the budget book, but the amounts on the slides and the amounts as built into the impact on the 2025 budget are based on that proration.
Not seeing any generalized comments or questions. We can now move on to program change number 1. May I have a mover and seconder for program change number 1, our fire dispatching service, please? I have Thompson and Garwood. That program change fire dispatch services be referred to the November 27th special budget for the meeting for further consideration. At this time, we can open the floor for comments and questions on this program change. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan. Through you to Chief Kirk, could you just provide a real quick overview of the change and the breakdown of the 25,000? Just so everybody gets a fresh perspective on the costs.
Chief Kirk.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan, and through you to the rest of council. So essentially, this is a record management system that the department's asking for. Essentially, it's an all records capture of what we do in the fire service and is essential to our daily operations. It provides record keeping for almost all we do within the department. So more importantly, it's a link to our computer-aided dispatch system and allows for a critical transfer of information for reporting, legal documentation, and our reporting needs and compliance to the Ontario Fire Marshal. So our current software is a software called Firehouse. It is coming to its end of life. We were notified about a year and a half ago of such. And it's important that we get ahead of this. So we have a software that is compatible with Barrie Fire Control, which is our dispatch service, and the software that they use. So the 25,000 is the budget that we took from, we met with 3 companies and we took what we thought was the best software. That 25,000 is obviously broken down into a 12-month cycle. And for the first year, that 25,000 would be as such. And then in the preceding years, it would be less, because out of that 25,000 operating, there's a small portion of that for the licensing fee. So it used to be the other way around with software programs. They'd get you with a high capital cost and a licensing fee, and it was a minor operating fee, but that's now changed. It's more operating than a license. So I hope that answers your questions, Deputy Kerbal.
Thank you. Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just further to that, Chief Kirk. So the licensing fees are a one-time upfront cost. Is that what you're saying? And that not an annual cost?
Chief Kirk?
Through your Mayor Coughlin to Councillor Alexander, that is correct. It's a one-time fee.
Not seeing anything further from council or staff. So we have moved and second that the program change fire dispatching service be referred to the November 27th special meeting for further consideration. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. We will now move on to our second program change. May I have a mover and seconder for the program change manager of recreation and culture? Councillor Garwood? And Deputy Cabral. That program change manager of recreation and culture be referred to the November 27th, 2024 special budget meeting for further consideration. And at this time, I'll open the floor for any comments or questions. I have Councillors Garwood and then Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Director Culver. Director Culver, just reading the project justification, I again understand it, but similar to the Deputy Mayor's request previously, could you provide a similar overview, understanding that I see this role as splitting out the current responsibilities associated with the manager of parks, facilities, and recreation, understanding culture is being added into there. So maybe you could speak to that, please.
Director Culver.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a difficult one to speak about in full, because really what we're looking at is a position that over time has accumulated a lot of accountabilities and responsibilities that actually aren't accurately reflected within the current job description. So really what this is doing is right-sizing the role. And I spent a lot of time researching other municipalities to sort of see what the breakdown of the similar scope is. And I could show you charts and graphs that would validate this. But I think council is aware that things like culture and events have become a growing interest in the community. They're, I think, aware of the success of our recreation offerings. And neither of these are reflected in the current job description. The truth of the matter is that if we expect to be strategic and move forward into the future, looking after these very, very broad and very, very large portfolios, we need to have the personnel to directly apply themselves to these responsibilities. So in general, that's my response, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions as well.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I guess a comment more than anything else is it's just seems to me it's creating other position for a manager. And I wondered when I was reading it over, when we talk about culture going back to 2012, it was a hot topic back in 2012. Um, um, Maybe nothing was done with it because it didn't become the hot topic that it was back in 2012. But with respect to this position, I just kind of think to myself why it would have to be a manager, kind of like a co-role, and why it wouldn't be able to be something along the lines of a coordinator with specific job descriptions. So those were the questions that I had. I don't know if I'm going to be able to support this just based on the current base budget right now. It's a difficult ask for me. I would actually wonder whether or not it might be appropriate to look at the job descriptions and see whether some of those job descriptions that have kind of crept into one position should be aligned with another position. And when it came to direct reports and things like that, it also begs the question, maybe direct reports should be spread around too. They don't necessarily all have to be going to the same individual. I struggle with creating another position because you have a direct report to somewhere else. So anyway, those are just my comments. Thank you.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. Just as an aside, is it possible, or maybe it's too late, but is it possible to put the program changes, the information up on the screen like we used to do in the past? We used to go through each one and it would show the name of the position and the ask.
Yeah, so we can.
I know, sorry, I
Take
should have asked
a
earlier.
quick minute on that. Counselor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Director Culver. 5.14 on the agenda speaks to another program change, the coordinator culture and events. So maybe stemming off of the deputy mayor's comment around a coordinator position, would that role be similar in the sense, understanding recreation's not mentioned specifically in the job title? Can you maybe, not to jump ahead by any means, but just make the comparison between the two?
Director Culver?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, so the coordinator position, and one of the reasons why it falls farther down the priority list is that it would fall under the purview of the new position, the new manager position, in so much as such activities as the CP holiday train, the 30th, as well as any breadth of cultural and event activity that was described in the 2012 plan or in any future studies that are undertaken would need boots on the ground. And so that's where the coordinator position comes in. It comes in as the activator of the direction and policy set by the manager. The manager would have oversight of also the recreation area, which, as I've mentioned earlier, is highly successful. Our camps are among the most attended in our area, in our region. But we're limited in terms of capacity to grow and to expand in terms of where the public may want them to go and how many more people we might be able to serve. So we need to have a bit more explicit attention on these in order to, I think, match what the public is demanding, that we can see through things like wait lists and et cetera, and also just generally, camps are becoming more complex in terms of standards, the type of individuals that we're needed to accommodate within the camps. They've become very complex and complicated offering. So again, it's looking for an individual who can have explicit direction. But as it relates to the coordinator of community events, this would be falling under the purview of the manager.
Thank you. And before I do go to the rest of council, just to follow on to that, I think it's important to note too that previous term, we did go through a a process where we identified the roles within the corporation and the capacity of each individual. And I would make council, I think we are all very aware that probably 1 out of 3 emails that we send is to this position that exists today, for myself anyway. When a garbage can is overflowed or the grass isn't cut, or there's something happening at the arena, or someone needs to get into a building, or so right now the position that is identified for Parks and Property is essentially taking on what we have for recreation and events. And I will make the statement that our events team, which some people in the town think that we have, because there's always staff members at local events supporting local events, whether it's our Autumn Fest or our tree lightings or whichever it is, there's always staff there supporting it. And I think that makes the community feel that we have an events team. We do not. This is staff stepping outside their role, above and beyond duties, other duties as assigned. And that's what this corporation has been doing for far too long. And because the juggling balls haven't hit the floor or exploded, doesn't mean that we don't need to right size. I continually hear from our residents that recreation is a way of life in Springwater. Our trails, our open spaces, whether it's a yoga class or whatever it is that brings people together, is something that people want. And the 30th celebration that was put on, again, not by an events team, by other staff, other duties as assigned, was really showcased, and we heard from residents, I would love to see this again. We want more support for the culture and the recreation in our community. Separating this role, I think, is essential. I think that we have had 1 person doing 2 jobs or 3 people doing 5 jobs maybe for quite some time. And I think that we need to acknowledge that. And I think too that our senior management team came together, and while this is the second priority, I would argue that the first priority was an essential. No one can argue that our emergency services, we have to be able to respond. This is the number 1 priority that's being put forward to us by our staff. So I think that we need to be mindful of that while we're discussing it. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I guess the piece here is it's really a 2-for-1 deal, and that's the part when we talk about the CP holiday train and we talk about the 30th, those are 2 events. And I don't know how many events we have, staff, as assigned, as you say. I would expect that would also come with compensation as required. So to have 1 person, those other individuals would still be required for those events. They'd still be assigned to those events. And hopefully those events, tend to happen outside regular hours. And I think some staff like to attend those events. I would suggest that some staff might enjoy attending those events because it does help them in some ways financially, or maybe in lieu time down the road, and they would be able to benefit in that respect. But this isn't for 1 position. This actually entails 2 positions. And that's the piece that is difficult for me. I think sticking a word, and I hate to say it, culture, and almost like creating another title. Culture is a very, very broad term, whether we're talking about people's cultures from different places in the world. There are certain cultures, cultural aspects of the way they live. When you look at Springwater Township, it's not like some other areas further south where they really do have a cultural and ethnic diversity that is explicit. Schools, activities, temples, religious festivals, all those kinds of things. And we're just on the cusp of that. And I really, to be quite frank, don't know if we're at the stage where this particular piece with the word culture, like we're going to have a cultural department, is really where we're at just yet, especially when we're already looking at a 14.7% increase, even though we're trying to pare it down somewhat. So that's the piece. If you create a manager's position, it's kind of like you're creating a manager or queen bee, but there's no worker bees. That's what I see.
Thank you. And before I do go to Counselor Thompson, I did see Director Culver. And while will agree that the cultural diversity of our community is changing and will forever change, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be celebrating and embracing our culture, whether it's the fall fair that has been happening for many, many years, which is supported, our spring water swing, I can go on and the culture, well, some may feel that that means diversity, the diversity within our own communities as what's celebrated in Midhurst, what's celebrated in Grenfell. There are many, many events that happen, and we completely rely on volunteers. And I think that's very unique from other municipalities, other neighboring municipalities that have departments that run a butter tart festival or a duck race or whatever it is that their communities ask and want from them. Our staff have continually supported these events, and whether or not there's a benefit, or sometimes they're there anyway, they're not even working and they're there because some people live in the community that they serve, but that's to the discretion of the staff member. That to me doesn't mean that they should be told that they can't be at home with their families while these events are happening. I think that this, again, being brought forward, and if it's the word culture that is a stumbling block, if it's a title that needs to change so that we can, whether it's community liaison officer or whichever we used to have at some point, I'm not getting hung up on the word culture being there, because I think that Springwater has fantastic culture, and I think that we need to continue to embrace and celebrate our heritage and culture here. Director Culver?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and a couple things, and I probably was understating within my justification statement. So as you correctly pointed out, there are other events. There's, as you mentioned, the Fall Fair that staff have a significant role in. There's the Maple Syrup Festival that the staff have a significant role in. We also tend to have a bit of a distant relationship from CRAs. And the CRAs are of a high value in our community, obviously. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. However, we don't have any kind of coordinated approach for how those CRAs might synergize or connect with one another across the breadth of Springwater. So one of the functions and roles of this new position would be to begin that process of synergizing the CRAs for maximum impact and maximum value across the organization. We have community halls that are underutilized in some cases, or potentially could be better maximized in other cases. We also have park spaces that are underactivated that could be activated. The culture banner, you're right, it's very, very broad, and some recognize it to be about arts and performance. Others recognize it to be about ethnicity and diversity. At the end of the day, we don't really have any official standing within that conversation as it pertains to the way Springwater operates. And so really what this is talking about is an opportunity to begin that conversation while splitting up a very, very full portfolio. The portfolio of a single individual is astounding. And so really what I'm looking at is trying to create some sustainability within the recreation parks and facilities overall scope of operation. And that's where the manager met this standard for the highest priority in terms of staff amongst the senior managers.
I have Counselor Thompson, Counselor Garwood. Okay, Counselor. I'll make it low. Counselor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you, Director Culver. I was part of the interview process when you joined our township, and was very impressed with the credentials and experience that you brought with us. And I think our first official visit was, as soon as you came on board, you met me at the Anton Mills Park, and it was a cool sunny day in the spring, and I was really impressed with some of your ideas and evaluation. One of the evaluations you initially made is that you were, I think, not surprised but shocked at what we were doing in our township, how really a great job we were doing with how little we had invested into Parks and Rec. And I think one of the things that might throw residents is the title of manager in this. And Our current manager of Parks and Recs, I'll tell you, is a worker bee. And I think so that management title might throw off a little bit. I liken them like to a playing coach on a hockey team. They're very much she's very much involved in our community. In fact, I see her everywhere. And one of the first evaluations you made is that some of our staff are at overcapacity. And can you just share with me how this position might alleviate that overcapacity and improve Parks and Rec? Because that would be for me the number one interaction or complaint I have from residents is like Mayor Coughlin has said, the trails aren't groomed, the grass isn't cut in a proper manner. Programming is at capacity. I can't, things like that. Could you share how that was going to improve things in our community that our residents would notice?
Director Culver?
Through you, Mayor. Absolutely. So one of the things I'll say is that, the current individual in the current position is not going to stop working. So this isn't really cutting back on terms of that individual. That individual is going to be applying themselves fully to the role that they're given regardless. What this does more than anything is give us the opportunity to focus. So there are specialties within the realm of Parks, Rec, and Facilities, and Parks and Facilities have a specific technical expertise. Recreation, culture events have another specific technical expertise. What we're doing by dividing this program into, and I will refer back to the justification sheet that's in the budget book. This role is actually undertaken in many municipalities of our size by up to 4 individuals, because that expertise can be applied to each of those 4 streams. Parks has an expertise, Facilities has an expertise, Recreation has an expertise, and Events and Culture can have an expertise if council chooses to move in that direction. So really what we're talking about is being able to focus and provide and take a look at where the priorities are. I could be making an argument for quite a lot of frontline staff, and there is an argument, and you do see in the list frontline staff indicated for sure, because they're absolutely needed and more than are listed are needed. But having said that, setting strategic direction, setting priorities, that needs to be the job of a manager. We need to have somebody who is discerning which is the right priority to pursue at that moment, especially when we're in the time we're in now, which is we're more highly reactive to the needs of the community. So that's why the manager position was a bit of a higher priority than the frontline position. But having said that, we need more of it all. Hopefully that helps the answer.
Thank you. I have Councillor Moore, Councillor Garwood, and Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Wondering if CIO could speak to, please, how these program changes are posted when they only say 10 months. If you could explain that so folks understand, and what this position and the coordinator position would actually be over the course of the 12 months.
CEO Schmidt?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Moore. So Councillor Moore, the all positions, as stated earlier, are prorated so they are costed for 10 months over the year for 2025, with the understanding that with budget approval, typically we're not hiring staff until probably March, April of the following year, and hence why we have the 10 months slated in the budget. I will note, though, I'll take the opportunity, there is one position that is annualized, that is the Public Works Support Assistant. It is an annualized cost, but the rest are 10 months, with the exception of the Fire Dispatches Service as well. And I believe that answers your question.
Follow on, Councillor Moore?
Thank you. So then the estimated net impact to tax for the manager position you have at 129,497. And is that 12 months or 10 months? Thank you.
CEO Schmidt?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, Councilor Moore, my understanding is for 10 months. So that would be the impact in 2025. And then, of course, in 2026, we would have to pick up the full amount. So 2026, you'll be picking up an extra 2 months for that position.
Thank you. And I think I'll elaborate. CEO Schmidt and I have had this conversation many times, and it actually says in our budget binder in the 2026 offset that on a go forward basis, I told you I was going to hold you to that one, that the annualization of it has been a pet peeve of mine for the last decade, because then we find ourselves in 2026, we're catching up with the 2 months on it. So while obviously the philosophy is you don't want to overtax residents in that year. If you know you're not going to bring that person on, you don't want to overtax them for the position, but then I feel that we're just playing catch up. I would also like to point out that when we are onboarding a new employee, part of the 129, the base is 119. So there's office furniture, there's the computer. So there are components within that are not on a go forward base budget portion of the salary. So I do appreciate this, and I will say it one more time. If we could just keep it to 12 months, I think it just makes it easier for us, and I think it gives residents an idea. Because when you read it and it looks like you're pulling portions out of it, while the intent is to accurately tax people within the 2025 year, it can be viewed as if we're not trying to paint the entire picture. So I see that there, and there are 3,500, 31. So there, it pulls it back down to the salary is this 119 at that. So I will now turn to Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. More of a comment around the culture piece specifically. We have a cultural and heritage advisory committee that's been advising this council now for 6 years. I wasn't on council last term, but council of the day clearly saw the importance of investing in culture. We have a 7-member committee. When I was a member of the public at that time, I had the honor of sitting on that culture committee, and now council representative for the Culture and Heritage Committee after they were merged together. So we are investing today in culture, see the benefit of it, and I understand why this is in there. And echoing Mayor Coughlin's comments around culture and thinking about the work that committee does beyond community, music, arts, CRAs, and events that I think that we operate that a lot of us probably don't even know about, like Doors Open, again, events that maybe we don't run, but we enhance. But I see this job specifically, and I understand the frustrations and the concerns, and I know there's going to be a lot of tough decisions tonight and on Wednesday and then through next week around how we appropriately present a budget to our residents that is fair and reasonable, but also understanding there are some investments that we need to make. I see one of those investments as this position specifically. I'm not focusing so much on this position. I'm focusing on how it's going to right size another position. And that's really where my goal is here. 90% of the phone calls and the emails and the concerns that I receive are around a park, a facility, or programming in this municipality or the Allenvale Arena. All 3 of those things go towards the same current person today. A person that answers the phone at 7 o'clock at night, a person that is accessible and available all the time, and that is not fair as well. This position should be right-sized, understanding it is a manager role, and there is a significant expense associated with that. I completely understand that, but we have all talked about it. I've had many conversations with members up here at this table around the level of service that our residents expect when it comes to recreation. We are a 4 seasons wonderland in this municipality. We say it all the time, but if the expectation is here and we feel like we're sitting here right now, well, we have to fill in that gap, and we can fill in that gap by right sizing a position, by keeping good people in appropriate working hours and providing them the support that they need that can then in turn support our other staff members that are working for those folks. So I see this as a positive, as a investment that I'd like to see us proceed with. it's challenging to have those conversations with folks if we're saying we're listening to you, we hear you, but then we're not going to make the investment. Folks want the investment. They want recreation and opportunities close to home. They want this. And I can see this position as supporting all of those important desires from the community.
Counselor Alexander and then Counselor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So, and not that I disagree with the sentiment up here, because I think recreation is incredibly important. As I've said before, it's really what drove me to eventually sit at this table was my involvement in recreation. When I look at the specific community events we do, and we do amazing community events in this town and sorry, in this township, what to me makes them so special is and I know they're volunteer based, but you're unique to each specific community we have in the township of Springwater. A community event that's put on in Phelpston is very different than a community event probably put on in Midhurst. And that's because it is the citizens of Phelpston that put it on. And yes, we very much appreciate the support we get from the township for Phelpston, Hillsdale, or like all of that. The support is very important and appreciated, but what makes the events unique is the community members that put them on. And I fear if we end up just having a big events department that puts on, organizes all of our events across the township, you lose that uniqueness. You have to play by more rules, to be honest. There's little things there. So I do struggle with that. And with respect to growing the department, and again, it's not that I don't agree the department doesn't need to be grown, and it's not that I don't disagree that the people in there, put in a ton of hours and do some great work. We have already grown this department this year by changing the management structure, by getting away from a GM that overlooked Parks and Recreation, as well as Public Works, and then everything funneled down to the manager of Parks and Recreation and Facilities. We added the director position. And then, so we have already grown this department a bit. So that's kind of how I'm struggling with adding an additional manager role within the same year, essentially.
Director Culver and then Counselor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. If I could just take the opportunity to clarify, again, perhaps I misstated when I talked about the synergization of communities and the CRAs. There's no tactical, strategical upside to homogenizing the personalities of each of the communities within Springwater. So that's not the outcome I was predicting. I want to make sure that it's understood that the whole point of becoming strategic and having the position dedicated to this role is to dig deeper on understanding those unique characteristics, enhancing them, and making sure that they benefit Springwater as a whole.
Counselor Fisher.
I too receive a lot of phone calls and emails regarding recreation in my ward. However, right now, I would say the vast majority of the phone calls I get are tax related. People asking me how they can have a 15% or nearly 15% tax hike, and why these programs actually push it over 20%. So I'm certainly willing to listen to all managers, because today they're just presenting. So I'm not saying that I'm voting for it or not voting for it. But I will say that in judging what to take or what not to take, I'm looking at a six-figure position here, and so as much as everyone likes recreation, I definitely have to be responsible when it comes to finances as well. So that although I'm not making a decision tonight, nobody is, right? That's one thing I consider. The other thing I'd like to mention is actually what Councillor Alexander had mentioned. We are actually very culturally diverse, right, in terms of our communities, and I think each CRA really speaks to that. So I certainly don't speak for my entire CRA, but I'd love to know what they would think about a six-figure position just to act as a liaison between us and other CRAs. I'd be really interested to see what they would have to say, because I think a lot of them wouldn't like to spend six figures on it. But then again, I do want to listen to everybody and reserve judgment until the time where we vote.
And thank you. Before I go to Counselor Garwood, I do have comment, but CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan. Through you to members of council. So kind of listening to the discussion here tonight, I guess, what really hasn't been discussed is kind of the composition of the current department. And so, it is the second largest department within the organization. It has a director, it has one manager, and it has 3 supervisors. In direct comparison to that, our Public Works Department has 1 director, 3 managers, and other supervisors. Again, we've been to this table a number of times throughout the course of the last year where there's been delays, not because staff aren't trying to get work done. The reality is there's too much work to get done by one individual. So there's been delays in some of our programs and services. There's been discussions about EDHS and bringing programs and services to EDHS. That takes resources, takes time. We've also been here talking about different capital projects that have been delayed. I won't get into the specific ones, not to put anybody on the spot, but you're well aware of some of those projects that have been delayed. Again, not because staff don't want to deliver, they're over capacity. This is a capacity issue. We need another individual to help assist and drive this organization. And that's what this request is. So it asks for your indulgence to at least hear us out on this a little bit further. And obviously, there's a number of other program changes that we're here to discuss tonight. But senior management did discuss this at quite a significant time span, if you will. And again, we've all agreed that this is one position that we feel rises to the top to try to move this organization forward. So.
And I do see Councillor Garwood, Councillor Thompson, and Deputy Cabral. I think too that this is, for me, it's a crux where we see ourselves with growing pains today. We used to be a township that relied heavily on the city of Barrie for recreational services, and now we're bringing those on ourselves. Residents want them locally. They want to be celebrated locally. They want program local. They want to utilize the halls. We want to keep it local. I think that there is an opportunity for this council to move forward with this position with a minimal tax impact, and that is to move forward by extinguishing our agreement with the city of Barrie. And I will turn to my CFO to look for that actual number. But it's approaching 92,600, almost $100,000 a year that we give to the city of Barrie to offer programming. There could be an opportunity to move out of that and apply that back to ourselves, so to allow our departments to grow to better serve. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan. Just more of a comment. Focusing on the volunteer piece, specifically within our communities, and understanding that this role would be a connection there. While it is incredible, and again, I believe we're lucky to have so many wonderful volunteer organizations in this municipality, they're also screaming for support. And I have the pleasure of sitting on about 4 of them in the Elmvale community, and some of them are run by 4 people. It is challenging for us to sit up here and say, let's just keep things the way they are. The volunteers are going to be fine, because the volunteers, unfortunately, are not growing in numbers each year. And that's just a reality amongst our entire municipality. That is not an issue in Elmvale or Phelpston or Hillsdale. That is across the board. So I do have concern with going in that direction. And just for clarity, to an extent, we are making decisions tonight. These items are being referred to Wednesday, and through the mayor to the CAO, or maybe the clerk can answer this. If an item is not referred to Wednesday, therefore it's not being considered to be a part of the budget. Is that correct?
There's a lot of head nods, but I don't know if Director yes, it's yes. So essentially, voting on it tonight or making a decision tonight or hearing it out, the intent of this evening's session is that we only deliberate on the next session, the ones that council are in support of. So if you need more information on something, we could definitely defer something to the next one. I think it is the intent. It also gives us a clearer picture. When we come to our next meeting, we will have a new potential program change percentage, which will give council a better idea. So kicking it on to the next one to hear more, staff has asked us to make decisions tonight as to whether this is a priority for council or not. On process, or to be added to the list? On process. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan. Okay, so thank you for bringing that up, because that's not how I was picturing it. Are we okay then going through all of the presentations and then voting? Because I have ones that, again, I've had discussions with staff, I've done my research, but I'm interested in the conversation at the table. And I don't necessarily want to say yes or no right now when there's still 7, 8 more to come. We could do it at, like, my question is, can we do it at the end of this meeting to then, after we've heard and had the discussion about all of them? Because it is a balancing act for me. I'm not taking all of them. I know that for a fact. It's how many I take. And if I take ones that have a higher percentage of a tax increase, that means I probably take less. So I would prefer not to have to say no or yes after each one and at the end of the presentations of all of them. Does that make sense?
I do hear the question, and I'm going to suggest that the agenda, and I'm not trying to be adversarial, the agenda was published with staff's priorities in line, and it was the intent to go through each of those. If there are ones that council is completely torn before, it's our meeting. So if you want to defer it to the next meeting so that council hasn't made a decision, we could do so. But again, if there's something that you're kind of on the line of, my suggestion would be to push it to the next meeting so that, because we do have 2 more opportunities to really look at that. Again, if there's something you do have an inkling to support, pushing it to that will give you that second look at it. Whereas if you know this is a hard no for me, then that would be, I think, the way to get a better understanding of a number at the next meeting. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment, and staff is presenting it this way because we directed them to. We directed staff to prioritize so that we could see what senior staff thought were the most important positions and the least important positions according to them. So I think we should take that into consideration as well.
Deputy Cabral and Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just reflecting on a couple of points about the manager prioritizing, providing direction and focus. And I thought that was something that the director of that particular department would be responsible for, and then have the manager basically implement. So I just kind of wonder what the roles actually are. When it came to the CRAs, there have been times over the past where I think CRAs have, I don't know what word to use. I'm going to use the word resentment. Things have happened where people who are on the CRA as volunteers sometimes did resent the fact that occasionally staff they felt were overstepping their bounds in providing direction to the CRAs. And I can't say that as far as the Elmvale CRA is concerned because they weren't in existence at the time. The other point I wanted to make was with respect to a comment about not having capital projects and certain things completed within the year. And it's always been because maybe there's not enough staff. When we did the service delivery review, the consultant provided us with a document, indicated who was over capacity, indicated where we needed to fill those gaps. We did that. In that particular year, we still had capital projects that did not go forward. So I guess for lack of a better term, we can't suck and blow at the same time. If 2 years ago we were at capacity and we didn't have capital projects going forward, now we find ourselves 2 years later and capital projects aren't going forward. I don't think it's merely because staff aren't in a position to make them go forward. There's other mitigating circumstances too, I would think.
Before I go to Councillor Moore, I think that this is a great example of democracy. You see something one way and I see it a completely different way. And I think that that is beneficial because I did hear in 2015 some adversary from our recreation groups where they were having to fundraise to replace toilets. And at that time, through our recreational master plan, we took another view. We brought all the rec facilities together and we tried to find a way that the township could take over the capital costs of having these halls, sustaining the halls, whether it's a hall, a pad, a rink building, or whatever it is that becomes the focal hub of each of our unique communities. Since that time, and at all the events that I attend, I don't hear our CRA members complaining about our staff. It's the complete opposite. I hear them being very grateful for all the work that our staff do to assist them in their visions at their events. This is not staff taking over anything. This is simply, they want to have an Easter egg hunt. How can we help? You want to have an Autumn Fest? How can you help? And that's where I think that maybe the difference is I would agree that 10 years ago, there was animosity between existing groups. And I think that we have, over the last decade, taken a lot of steps and been able to come to this is the fork in the road. We had a position that was really focused on cutting grass and maintaining buildings and replacing boards, on just doing everything that everybody wants to see. But now it's more of, how can we help embrace and start to continue to celebrate those? And I do agree that our volunteer base, it's not just events. Like, every single rink is volunteer run, but how they get the water available, where those shovels come from, how all that happens is still staff time. So while a lot of what we do in this community, and when I talk to neighboring municipalities about the volunteer base we have in Springwater, under no circumstances is hiring this position to try and deplete that, because that's what makes that's what makes Springwater special, is all the volunteers that come together, and having a position to continue to embrace and ensure that the volunteerism is sustained is a goal of mine through this position. I will, and if indirect, and then I have had Councillor Moore, and I can hear Councillor Fisher. So I think that means is that your hand? Thank you. Deputy Cabral.
I just want to point out that prior to this term, we did have a community recreational association, and we disbanded it, if I'm not mistaken, did we not? And I'm wondering, now we find ourselves 2 years later where we're being advised that we need somebody to help coordinate that, when we already kind of had something that was supposed to be doing that. And I wasn't on it, so I can't necessarily speak to it. All I know is that it was discontinued.
And you are correct. So in the last term, the committees of council were reorganized. And at that time, there used to be a recreation advisory committee, which is completely separate from each of our, which we renamed CRAs, or Community Recreation Associations. So the advisory committee was kind of a committee that would come together for ice rates, events. If there was a park design coming forward to council, they would review the park design before it came to council. We disband that organization, but we still have actually created a new Community Recreation Association to, I think that rounded out each of our wards anyway. Councillor Moore, and then Councillor Fisher.
Two things. First is to go back to the comment made about discontinuing the agreement with the city of Barrie for recreation. Difficult to talk about how much we support recreation, and yet we are willing to discontinue that agreement without a plan in place for those that do enjoy that agreement. Secondly, I'd like to ask, if I could, Director Culver. I know not too long ago you mentioned to me that you struggled with staff this past summer. Can you tell me, we have a director, a manager, 3 supervisors, and how many staff do you have right now that are available to work, or how many that are not available to work?
Director Culver.
So through you, Mayor, to Councillor Moore. So first of all, we have 1 manager and 2 supervisors, not 3. We have at peak capacity in the midst of summer, focused entirely on outside work. We have, I'll look to Manager Dean for support, I think 8 in total, to cover off a total of 370 something hectares of land, including 30 kilometers of trail. In the wintertime, we have 2 full-time outside, 1 contract outside, and 6, I believe it's 6 operators inside. Sorry, Manager Jean's helping me out with some information.
Sorry to interrupt.
Arenas
Jardine is also giving you the not six, she's
five.
giving you the five.
Five operators inside that work between, so in the operating season inside is between effectively August through till May with a 4-month summer season.
Thank you. And maybe to talk about the things we don't like to talk about, for instance, canceling the CP holiday. The arena has been closed 3 times, to my knowledge.
Two in my time, Mayor.
Two this year,
Yes.
1 last year. We're not even providing, in my opinion, what our residents are. We're not even able to keep the facilities that we have open. This is not, in my opinion, adding a nice to have. Staff has identified this as a necessity, and I also believe it to be a necessity. Councillor Fisher?
Two comments. One, I actually took a look at it today, funnily enough. The Barrie agreement we have, I think it's tremendous value for the money. It's about $87,000. And I, for one, would never support getting rid of it. I think it's tremendous value for the money, particularly when we're looking at 6-figure jobs, multiple ones. Another comment, I'm very active inside of my CRA, and I can tell you we're largely independent of staff. And I know some people may disagree, but we run most of our programs, most of our events, whether it be, Autumn Fest, the Soapbox Derby, even maintaining the rink. I can tell you that that's largely done. I know because I'm one of the volunteers who's typically there. Yeah, we would actually love more help, but I don't know that I see this position doing it. If anything, I see maybe more of a laboring position, taking care of it. And I can tell you that rink's not very old, but it needs work. It's probably 2 or 3 seasons away from becoming derelict, right? So I'll say it, I don't see value in this position, but I will say the CRAs, at least my CRA, is very independent. And whether it comes to fundraising, whether it comes to maintenance of the facilities, even sometimes grass cutting, unfortunately. But I'll leave my comments at that.
So council, we do have the position before us. It's our program change number 2. It has been moved in second. It's the manager of recreation culture to be referred to the November 27th special meeting for further consideration. Not seeing anything further from council or staff. Council, all those in favor? And that has been defeated. Council, may I have a mover and seconder for our 3rd program change this evening? Operator, thank you. Deputy Cabral. Councillor Fisher, that program change operator 1 be referred to the November 27th special budget meeting for further consideration. And at this time, maybe I'll turn to CO Schmidt for any further indication. No, I will just move to council for any comments or questions on this position. And we will just Councillor Fisher?
Through you to Manager Dean, could you describe this position, give it an overview for council, please?
Manager Culver?
Thank you, Mayor. As mentioned previously in the preceding conversation, we are understaffed when it comes to the scope of operations in facilities, parks and recreation. The operator 2 position is under job description assigned to both inside and outside work. So they would have the skill set to be able to work in the Elmvale Arena as well as work outside in the summer. One of our interest is in ensuring that the Elmvale Arena has at least more capacity to stay open and remain in operation when we do have challenges with staffing, whether it's due to illness or simply other operational needs. Most importantly, we do need extra help outside because as council is aware, the complaints were rising in 2024 regarding some of the work that we were unable to get to due to lack of capacity.
I'm Councilor Alexander and then Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Director Culver, can you speak to how many openings, like job openings we currently have? I see them a lot for the Elmville Arena, so I'm wondering if part of our problem is not just staffing, but the fact that we don't have the current positions filled.
Thank you. Sorry, through you, Mayor. Yeah, and looking at the Director Dean or Manager Dean, we have currently 0 openings unfilled.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I know that we do hire casual staff, and I did see a posting for that not long ago. So since you're saying that there isn't any openings, I suspect that that one has been filled. But I also wanted to speak because a lot of this has to do with the summertime and the effective maintaining of the parks and cutting the grass and whatnot. And I know that there's also, we talked about prioritizing some of the playgrounds and things like that so that we weren't effectively cutting grass that nobody was going to benefit from. I'm wondering, did you have any opportunity, Director Culver, to kind of have a look at that and see whether or not that's a way to reduce the challenges? And in addition to that, what would the role of this particular individual be in the wintertime? Would it be strictly to go back on the inside at the arena and ensure that we didn't have any staffing issues?
Director Culver.
So thank you for the question. Thank you through you, Mayor Coughlin. So yes, we are looking at prioritizing parks. The master plan talks about a classification system. We are set to deliver the master plan to you about the December 18th meeting, which will see the classification system that'll use to guide us in terms of how much resources we apply. Having said that, we're not talking about removing parks. We're talking about how best to apply levels of standards of service to those parks. I still estimate currently that we are deficient by up to 6 bodies relative to the amount of parkland that we have in the township of Springwater. Part of the issue is that we are spread out through 530 square kilometers, and the travel time between places provides a lot of time consumed. So given that we have, in my estimation, a 6-body deficit, this 1 body would definitely help and move us in the direction that we need to go. Some of the parks rationalization may help to reduce that number from my estimate of 6 to 5, but we still have a gap to cover. The other factor to consider is that our parkland is actually growing, so we'll be onboarding new parks shortly in the next coming years. So that's going to change that number. I believe right now, and I was doing math, I do think that we have about roughly 35 to 40 acres per person at our peak capacity in the summertime. Which is based on a 40-hour work week distributed over the 16 weeks of the summer. So it's a lot to ask an individual to cover, and I'm speaking very generally because sports fields require a different level of care than a park that doesn't need to be maintained quite as often. But generally, we are so short that the 1 will definitely help us. To the other part of your question was about what would their role be in the wintertime. So we do have a significant amount of winter work that does need support. And so in an ideal world, this position would help us out with that winter work while having the ability to move inside on demand and serve the needs of an inside operator. Inside operators have to be able to drive the Zamboni as well as a general understanding of how a facility works so that they can keep it open. Casual laborers don't have that credential nor that level of expertise.
Follow on?
Very quick follow on. The number 35 acres, 14 hectares per week. Is that strictly grass cutting area, or is that 35 acres encompassing our parkland that we have or open spaces that we have that may or may not need cutting? Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around, is that 35 acres per individual cut grass, or 35 acres of parkland and a percentage of that would be grass?
Director Culver?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So it's a very simplified formula, admittedly. And what it speaks to is our managed areas, which ranges from manicuring ball diamonds and soccer fields all the way to the once a month cuts that we might do in some of the areas that are less, the trailheads, for example, that are less needed. But it's still an acres per person type of formula, and it's again simplified. But the reason why I put it in there was to use it for comparison's sake, so that you can understand how much area is being managed by so few people.
Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and not to jump ahead a bit, but can you just explain the difference between the operator 1 and the operator 2 positions that you're asking for?
Director Culver?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, the operator 1 and operator 2 are identical when it comes to impacts on the tax rate. However, the operator 1 is designated for outside work only. Operator 2 has the ability to be both.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I was going to ask the very same question. So the two complements, so the two operator 1 positions is outside work only, and then the operator 2 is inside, meaning they can drive a Zamboni, or what makes them the difference?
To you, Mayor Coughlin, exactly. So they would be working inside the Elmvale Arena. If they're an operator 2, they have the credentials and certifications to be able to provide for that level of work inside the Elmvale Arena.
Follow on, thank you. So essentially, it's 3 positions, except for the Zamboni certificate. Is that correct? Because that would be fairly easy to get, I would think, if you started as an operator 1 and then could do a certificate, and you would have that qualification.
Director Culver?
So through you, Mayor Coughlin, some of our operators might argue that it's not a simple certification, so I won't debate. Having said that, it's called a CIT. It's a Certified Ice Technician. It's offered through ORFA. I believe there are 6 modules that need to be covered to accomplish the certification. I believe it's 6. That's a requirement in order to be able to operate the Zamboni. It also puts them into a position of responsibility in the arena, because we work, I think that it's a 19-hour daily schedule, which can't be supervised. So those operators have responsibility for the operation of that arena, regardless of whether a supervisor or manager is on site. So it comes with a significant accountability.
Follow on?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, but the pay is the same. So I just want to confirm the pay is the same for
Director Culver?
operator 1 and 2.
So through you, the pay band is the same, correct? Yeah, and there are certifications required for outside as well, some machinery certifications as well.
And aside from driving the Zamboni, who maintains the temperature of the Elmvale Arena? Who does that? Because I know the last time I was there, I actually got a squeegee and was taking the water off, because pulling the ice in and out, it's not just as simple as mopping a floor and driving a Zamboni. There's your forward-facing customer service. That I just want to make sure that we are painting the correct picture of everything that this job entails.
Yeah, so exactly correct, and thank you for bringing it up. They do have a forward-facing customer service role. They manage and meet teams that arrive in the building. They are responsible for the safety of the public in the building, safety of the public on the ice. They are, our ice is not easy. It's a 1952 building design, although the slab is newer than that, the ice surface, but it has contours which make it difficult to maintain the ice. The ice has to be kept to a minimum thickness. When there's a tournament, we have to get strategic about how we manage the ice because we do building in order to be able to do a cutting to try and keep it level. If there's a significant liability related to gaps in the ice, places where we hit the concrete or where there are gaps at the kick plate, the ice temperature, and you've mentioned another big challenge in the building, which is managing humidity. Managing humidity is virtually impossible currently. We have some dehumidifiers that are undersized currently, and we're working, as council's aware, on a grant fund to help solve that problem. But you're right, operators are often in the place of having to manage some of these seasonal challenges. The atmosphere outside has a big impact, and so things have to be adjusted according to what the atmosphere outside is doing, and that is a combination. It's a team effort between the manager, supervisor, and the operators to make sure that facility, which is a very sophisticated operation, is functioning properly and safe for patrons.
Not seeing anything. Council, may before us, we have the program change for the operator to be referred to the November 27th special budget meeting for further consideration. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Council, may I have a mover and seconder for the program change? Director of People and Talent, please. Deputy Cabral? I need a seconder in order to have a discussion about the position. Thank you. Councillor Thompson, that the program change director and people and talent be referred to the November 27th special budget meeting for further consideration. And at this time, I can open the floor for any comments or questions on this position. Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has been defeated. I will now move on to 5.5. I have a mover and seconder to refer the program tax and utility coordinator, please. Councilors Fisher and Deputy Cabral, that program change tax and utility coordinator be referred to the November 27th special meeting for budget for further consideration. At this time, council, I can open it up for any comments or questions. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Sorry, I'm trying to sift through my program changes. I wanted to speak to Director Bedard, though, because the junior financial analyst position is as well. Can you just do a brief overview of both, please?
Director Bedard.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Moore. Both positions are very similar in their building the what I'll call boots on the ground capacity of the finance department. With respect to the tax and utility coordinator, we currently have one tax and utility coordinator on staff right now, and they are responsible for the property tax billing and the water and wastewater billing for the township. With the recent growth in the number of utility accounts the township has, this position has had to forego all of its property tax billing responsibilities and focus 100% on water and wastewater billing. So it's created a situation within the finance department where the property tax billing is at the management level and not at the boots on the ground role where it should be. With the expected future growth of both utility and tax accounts within the township, as you know, we see Midhurst grow out, the existing utility coordinator or the existing tax and utility coordinator position is going to be at beyond capacity. Currently, right now, to conduct our water billings, we're seeing an individual work on upwards of both days on the weekend just in order to get the billings done. Furthermore, as the number of accounts grow with respect to water and wastewater billing, so does the customer service component of that position. Utility billing is complicated in the sense that it's driven by consumption, and consumption in many instances feels debatable by account holders, the property, or sorry, the utility is measured by a meter. The assumption is the usage is metered. However, many account holders feel that is debatable, and it's debatable because they do not want to pay, or they feel the bill they've been given is too high. So there's a great customer service component associated with this role, just educating property owners and utility account holders of their consumption patterns and the effect that consumption has on the bill that they have. So every quarterly billing, we get a number of complaints, and it's really an educational opportunity with respect to the water goes in, it's used for consumption, and you receive that bill for the water that you've used. Likewise, we're having to educate account holders on how to look for leaks, the signs of when your toilet may be leaking or your water softener may be leaking. With the number of accounts that we have right now, as I mentioned, this job is beyond capacity. With the number of accounts that were anticipated to be out with the development in Midhurst, that's only going to increase. So the tax and utility coordinator, as I mentioned, is really to build capacity with the finance department to make sure that we're able to serve our current residents to the capacity that they deserve, as well as having the capacity to address the future growth. With respect to property tax billing, as I mentioned, that is at the manager level right now, and it should be at the coordinator level. When a manager in finance is doing work, that means that it comes to the director to review. Every process in finance should have a secondary review. That secondary review is part of the checks and balances that forms the financial integrity of the finance department. When a process comes to me to review that is part of the day-to-day operations of the township, it's extremely inefficient. If I'm focused on the day-to-day, I'm not focused on the important financial affairs that are moving the township forward, such as our long-range financial plan, the budget that we have, rolling that out into a multi-year budget, forecasting we have 2 generational capital projects on the go, forecasting our cash flow for those projects. There's substantial work that is done at the director level. And when I'm involved in the day-to-day, it really takes my capacity away from the high level role that I should be performing and takes me, as I said, into the day-to-day. So it's more about building that capacity at the ground level so that, one, I can focus on the role that I've been hired to do, and 2, it empowers the manager to be a manager, to lead the department or to lead the division that they have, and not be so ingrained in the day-to-day operations. The same can be said about the junior financial analyst. While the tax and utility coordinator is more of a front-facing customer service position, the junior financial analyst will improve the financial integrity of the township from the back end, from the side that township taxpayers don't see. And some of the focus this position will have, presently, we're not very good at collecting our accounts receivable. When money is owed to the township, we issue the invoice in a timely manner, but we don't have the capacity to necessarily follow up on collection in that timely manner if the invoice goes delinquent over 30, 60, 90-day period. The reason for that is invoices are issued by our accounts payable and our accounts receivable coordinator, and they're responsible for both functions within one job. As the township's budget has increased, we put a great focus on ensuring our township vendors are paid in a timely manner. These are the small businesses, the big businesses, the people in our community and outside our community who provide programs and services to the township. And we put that focus on ensuring they are paid within the terms of the invoice that they issue. As our budget grows, the number of invoices we process grows, as well as the due diligence we have to do with respect to verifying electronic banking information, that increases as well. It's our payment process environment isn't as simple as receiving an invoice, issuing a check to the address on the invoice. With the rise in electronic payments, there's more that we have to do in the background to ensure the authenticity of the payee, which we're distributing the funds to electronically. So the junior financial analyst would assist in alleviating capacity on the AP side to ensure that role can perform the expectations that are given to that role, as well as improving our accounts receivable. And one of the things that I'm most excited about the junior financial analyst is implementing some of our back end, month end, quarter end, year end processes that will help our financial reporting internally and externally to you happen in a more timely process. What we've seen since I've been here, and I've just been past 6 months, is that we have not provided to council a budget to actual report with commentary from the finance department. Part of that speaks to capacity, and part of that speaks to this is always the role of the director to do. What I'm trying to create within the finance department is that the finance department does not lose momentum when the director is not in role. And we've seen that within the current structure where some of this reporting to council has stopped because there was no director, and now we're playing catch up. So what I'm trying to do is establish the finance department with the right structure so that we can provide that internal reporting, that financial reporting both internally and externally in that timely manner.
Thank you for that. Counselor Fisher? Counselor Thompson.
I just want to thank Director Bedard for that. I think you make an excellent case for both positions. For me, hearing that accounts receivable is lagging, that's for a business that would cause for alarm. I'm not saying I'd support either one of them tonight, but I would certainly support for it to go on. I think that I myself would like to analyze both of them and see how it can benefit the department. I think hearing that a manager is taken away and having to do duties that are a rung or two below could be costly for us. And I think as we hear our budgets keep growing, we need to be cognizant of that as well. It is something that happens in the background. So I'd like to see these go forward to at least take a look at them on the 27th.
Counselor Thompson?
Through the chair to Director Bedard. So the funding sources on this, it's about half from water and wastewater reserves and half from tax. So that percentage, does that stay the same going forward in future budgets, or do you change that percentage each year for each budget?
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Thompson. Right now, the position is funded 50% from water and wastewater reserves or the water and wastewater rates, as we anticipate they will be supporting water and wastewater billing through 50% of their job capacity. Over time, that may increase with the number of utility counts, or it may decrease. However, there will always be that component that is coming from the water and wastewater rates for this position, I feel. Again, to answer that question, 10 years down the road, would it still be the same 50-50 split? I can't predict. However, I do know that the number of accounts will continue to increase, and so will the demands on the position.
Thank you. And for clarification, in previous other positions, when the funding source has been changed from what it was approved by council, that would then come back to council if there was going to be a larger tax implication. For example, if you decided that this position was all of a sudden going to be funded 70% by taxation and 20% by, or 30% by water and wastewater, that would come back to council if you were altering the funding source of a position. CO Schmidt?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, two members of council. So yes, the funding source change would come back to council for your approval.
Thank you. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just a couple of questions. Number one, could you kind of give me a ballpark figure, say over the course of the last 2 years, what the number of accounts has increased by? I have no idea how many accounts we had 2 years ago and how many we have today. And I mean, that's a lot easier for me to then wrap my head around whether or not, the growth is really shown that we need an additional person in there. That's one question. The second one would be with respect to the collections piece. Do you know of any other municipalities that are using collection agencies to garner that, or is that for really, really bad delinquent accounts that they're just not successful for? Because at the end of the day, tax is one way where you can seize the property at some point in time, but for water and wastewater, I don't believe, or I don't know, as a matter of fact, whether township would be in a position to do that on that side of it. We just cut it off, I guess.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Cabral. When we look at the number of accounts on municipal water and on municipal sewers or wastewater, In 2022, there was approximately 12,500 municipal water accounts and 6,000 wastewater accounts. When we compiled the budget as of October of this year, there was 13,800 municipal water accounts and 7,200 wastewater accounts. With respect to the collection of amounts owed to the township, water and wastewater can be added to the property tax account as a municipal service delivered to a property. It's eligible to be added to the property tax account. So with that respect, we will be very close to 100% of collecting all utility accounts or all utility invoices that we issued. With respect to some of our miscellaneous invoices, whether it be attending a motor vehicle collision, recovering those costs. To be honest, I'm lost in the moment and I'm a bit ahead of myself with respect to discussing the junior financial analyst position. There are other invoices that we issue. If we can tie that to a service delivered to a property, we can tax roll or put it on that tax account for collection. If we can't, in some instances, we're at the mercy of the individual that we invoice with respect to whether they want to pay us or not. We do send delinquent invoices through to a collection agency. Typical within the municipal environment is we don't see much success going that avenue. So in my opinion, the one way we would be more successful with collecting on our receivables is following that 30, 60 day somewhat timeline, ensuring that that property owner or that not that property owner, that invoiced account is reminded of their obligation to pay in that timely manner. Thank you.
Counselor Fisher?
It's related, but a bit unrelated to these positions. Through you to CAO Schmidt, if a department head were to, obviously they want these program changes in these positions, would they be able to, and I'm sure they can, go into their present budget and be able to cut certain things to compensate for it? I'll give you an example. Just an example. In Parks and Recreation, I'm just going through what you and I had talked about before. For example, fitness instructors, $30,000, fitness instructors, adults, $20,000. This is just an example. There's $50,000. Would a department head be able to go in and say save us $50,000 by re-engineering and be able to get that position paid for by essentially cutting from their budget, right? Looking internally before we just add something to the budget as though we're a regular business. Can you speak to that, please?
CO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. Through you to Councillor Fisher. So maybe I'll answer it this way, Councillor Fisher. So staff do not have the authority to hire or create additions to the staff complement, and hence why these positions are coming to council. So to your point directly, I guess, if staff are bringing forward a position, a new addition to their complement, which we're doing tonight or suggesting tonight, there are opportunities for those departments to look at different ways to try to fund those positions, which we've tried to do. But to go ahead and try to make room within their existing budget to form a new position, no, they don't have that authority to do that.
Follow on?
Why not? I mean, really, yeah.
We can adjourn the agenda or anyway, CEO Schmidt, and we are working.
I think it's a
towards-
valid question, actually. If it were a department in a business, a department head could go in and move things around and cut from their budget in order to allow something. So I think it's a valid question.
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. Through you to Councillor Fisher. If council wishes to delegate that authority to staff, happy to do so.
I'm just thinking it would be it would be interesting if staff could come forward and really manage their own internal budget and say, I would like to take this out, or this is no longer necessary. Because I would think that if they can't cut from it, essentially, it just keeps building to infinity, right? So, there might be something within a budget, within a departmental budget, that's no longer necessary or could be cut. Because if we exist under this model municipally or in government, we're just going to keep adding, right? So I think frankly, it would be good to discuss that with department heads, how they would, cut inefficiencies or trim the fat within a budget before we just discuss adding to it. So I think it's completely valid at any level of government, right? Because we can just keep adding every time we come to budget. And unfortunately, I sort of feel we do that every time we come to the table. We add, but what do we cut? We never talk about cutting, right? You know, and I just gave that as an example. I mean, that may be something we want to keep, but I think we could drill down into every single department and probably find, well, I don't know, we could find money within each one of it and probably pay for some of these program changes. I mean, it's just, if it were, guys, if it were General Motors, I'd go to the paint department and say, how can you save money, right? I'd go to the weld department, how can you save money? Each one of those department heads would come back and they would be able to deliver, right? Before they hired anyone or bought new paint or whatever the case may be. So I would challenge staff at all levels, come back and bring us something that maybe is inefficient at this point. My 2 cents worth.
And I would be happy to second that delegation of authority when it comes forward. All right, I think if council has any further questions about this specific tax and utility coordinator, and we will take a break after, if that suits council. Anything further for Director Bedard on this position? The tax utility coordinator be referred to the November 27th special budget meeting for further consideration. All those in favor? And that has carried. And at this time, we will take a break until 7:15, please.
You got a stock? Okay. Oh, good.
We're now moving on to 5.6, program change, development, engineering technologist. May I have a mover and seconder for this, please? Deputy Cabral and Counselor Thompson, that program change, development, engineering technologist be referred to the November 27th, 2024 special budget meeting for further consideration. And at this time, I'll open it up to council for deliberation. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm just curious through you to, I think it would be Director Heron. This particular position, who else in the your department is already performing these types of tasks?
Yeah, I need a microphone. Sorry. Thank you. And in the absence of the director, I will turn to CEO Schmidt to comment.
Thank you, Mayor Cogman, through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. So I'll do my best to provide some information as it relates to this position and answer the deputy's question. So in the current portfolio, we do have a development engineering technologist. That position is currently somewhat pulled in two ways. For the most part, essentially they work on development within the municipality, mostly outside of the Midhurst area. Our manager of development services, for the most part, is concentrating on the development within Midhurst secondary plan. And then the other portion of this person's role is essentially to deliver on capital project delivery. So road capital projects, water, wastewater capital projects and such. And so the reason, if I may, the reason why this position, the idea is that we do have like I said, in the program change, we have 1.5 FTE essentially focused on our development services, and we have essentially one individual, 1.5 FTE focused on our capital infrastructure delivery. The idea would be is this position would come in, would focus on strictly development outside of the Midhurst secondary area. So Elmville, Snow Valley, Center Vespra, you name it, Hillsdale. And then the existing position would be focusing more on the capital delivery side. Obviously, in front of council through the 2025 budget, we have a $56 million proposed capital budget, which obviously needs some attention. And hence the idea would be is the existing position would assist with delivery of that program. This particular position, the idea would be is it would be 100% funded through a new development fee. Essentially, for an example, when an application comes in for a subdivision, there's internal infrastructure that's usually proposed or always proposed in a subdivision. If we have a development that has, I think the example in the program change is $5 million in infrastructure that's being proposed in the development, you tag on a 2% or a 3% fee on top of that. And essentially that development by itself could pay for the position. And we have a number of developments coming forward. And so we feel that this is a way that we could structure this position to allow for it not to be funded through taxation. It is a model that other municipalities are using, whether it be Township of King, whether it be Wasaga Beach, whether it be Innisfil and others. There's many other examples that are out there. Some of them charge more than up to 5-6% for the development. We're proposing anywhere from a 2 to 7%, but that would have to come back for council's approval. So,
Follow on.
Thank you, CEO Schmidt. I do apologize to Director Heron. This is Public Works. I guess my thoughts on this is whether or not, at least for me anyway, a bit premature. And the only reason I say that is we've had a couple of developments come forward to us where they've been asking for extensions. And some of the development that has been going on is kind of like at a bit of a standstill, for lack of a better term. And even though this is based on development fee, you have to have those shovels going in the ground, the building permits kind of being issued in order to capture these funds too. So I'm, in my opinion, I'm wondering if it's premature in the sense that maybe this would be a better project for next year, 2026, seeing where our development starts to kick back up into. I don't know what's going on up in Hillsdale. I don't think they've been before us recently for an extension, but we just had one this past fall where they asked for another couple of years. It's not the first one. We had one last year too, where they came before us and asked for an extension. Not the same group, a different developer. So that would be my concern with this particular position at this particular time. I do see the value in sourcing the funds from a different stream of funding anyway. So anyway, that's kind of where I sit.
CEO Schmidt?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Collins. Through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. So just one point I just wanted to clarify is that, so it's not dependent on when houses are being built. It's dependent on when the application actually comes in. So when the proponent submits an application to the municipality, that's when the fee would actually be required to be paid. So it's when applications are, again, first coming to the municipality, not if they're stalled on the application. We would have already collected some of that revenue.
Thank you for that. And I do apologize that I didn't ask this question earlier in our one-on-one, but should the development fees not be made readily available, and as this is coming from development charges and with no tax implication, what should happen if there was a shortfall in a year where the DCs that were collected were not able to offset this position?
Through you, Mayor Colgan. So again, point of clarification. So not development charges. This is development fees. This is a separate fee in our user fee charges bylaw. So it has nothing to do with development charges. This will be funded when the proponents come in. So developer A comes in, wants to propose a 500 home or a 500 unit subdivision. They essentially have internal infrastructure that they're required to construct as part of their development. We would collect a fee at that time when they submit their application. The fee would be a percentage of the overall internal infrastructure. We would collect that, and to the extent that we have funds that exceed this position, that would go into a reserve, and we could use those funds on a continual basis in years where essentially maybe we don't have the same level of development. It's similar to building services. Building services, we collect building permit fees. Those fees go into an account. We use those fees to pay for our staff right now. So when development or building is not at the same level as what it has been maybe in years past, we can draw on that reserve to help assist cover our costs. And then in years when obviously building and or development is happening, we're collecting additional revenues that get funded into that reserve. So the idea is not to have an impact on the taxpayer for this position today and in the future.
Thank you. And my apologies for saying charges instead of fees, but the intent was just to understand that there is in fact a reserve already in place that should there be a shortfall within a year, if there was less than anticipated, it would be to council's decision whether the intent would be that this would default to the reserve and not the tax base, or how would the shortfall of this be captured?
Through you, Mayor Colgan. So again, yes, the idea would be is that we need to establish the reserve. And once we obviously are in a position to collect those fees, and to the extent that we don't need those fees or those revenues to offset this position, it would go into reserve. And then in future years, to the extent that development doesn't happen at the same level and we were required to draw on those reserves, then we could draw on the reserve to ensure that the net impact to the bottom line is zero, no tax impact.
Thank you. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I guess now I'm wondering, is it possible for us to establish this reserve in advance of hiring for this position? Since we don't have a reserve in place now, it kind of like a chicken and the egg thing here now. If we go forward with this, we're actually going to have to start collecting this fee in order to pay for this position, if I'm correct. Whereas if we establish this fee first and then hire down the road a little bit. If, I don't know how we would do that arbitrarily. But that would be my next question, I guess.
CO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Colvin, the Deputy Mayor Cabral. So yes, so the reserve does not exist today. The development fee does not exist. It would be something that would need to come to council for your approval. The approach tonight was to essentially bring forward a position and to allow for this to move forward. And we have a revenue source that we can draw upon in order to do so moving forward. But again, the fee would need to be approved by council. So if you're approving the program change, then yes, we would expect that you'd need to approve the development fee.
Follow on.
Okay, once again, I guess I'm on the other side of the fence where we should approve the fee and then at an appropriate time hire an individual when there's some funding in that reserve fund. I don't like, that's where I stand right now. I just seems like we're putting the cart before the horse here.
CO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Colvin. Through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. We could do that, absolutely. I guess someone could ask, why are you creating this fee? What's it going towards? So justified in the sense of, I guess, we're trying to bring forward a position that would help the municipality drive the organization forward, whether it be on the development or capital infrastructure piece. And we're trying to provide, to other comments that were made earlier before the break, how are we looking at ways of funding these positions? Here's a way to fund the position. So I understand your comment about, the development fee should come forward first, assuming that we're going to collect something that's going to go towards a position, hopefully in the future.
And before I go to the rest of them, I apologize to Councillor Alexander. I did have Councillor Alexander written down, and then I do have Councillors Moore and Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and to CEO Schmidt. So I do appreciate the other funding sources and thinking kind of maybe outside the box, or maybe not that outside the box, because a lot of other municipalities are funding this way. So that's much appreciated. Given the nature of the work and the amount of work we pass on to consulting firms that is sometimes similar, such as Ainley, and I know there's other ones out there as well. Does this type of position potentially allow us to not have to go out for the same amount as consulting work, and some of this would now be able to be done in-house?
CO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Colgan, to Councillor Alexander. So great question. That is a possibility. We haven't conducted that analysis at this time. But to your point, I believe our contract with our township engineer is coming due in 2025. So it is something that we could definitely raise if council is supportive of this position, something we could definitely have a conversation with them.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. It's for yourself, probably to Director Hearn. The developments that come to us take a long time before they're subdivision agreement ready. So do you know what we're looking at for the next calendar year for subdivision agreement ready proposals?
Director Hearn.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and to Councillor Moore. In terms of incoming applications, we estimate that there will be 2 plans of subdivision that we will intake this year. And that tends to reflect the standard over the past decade. And in terms of final approvals, that tends to vary quite a bit. But what we are seeing is that there's always interim work that happens on plans of subdivision. And for instance, in Hillsdale, there isn't a current work occurring, and they're looking to do tree clearing and site preparation as an interim to final registration of the plan. That same level of work is happening on many other plans of subdivision. So there's a lot of interim applications, part lot control, site servicing plans, it goes on and on. So I'm hoping I'm answering your question. Between receiving an application and actually registering a plan of subdivision, there's a substantial amount of work that occurs. So the importance of the position that we're discussing is that the field of planning heavily relies on the field of engineering to move all of those applications forward, whether it be change of use through a zoning bylaw Or how are we going to service the lands where the pipe's going to go and is the curbing going to meet engineering criteria? So there's virtually every application that we deal with in the planning realm requires input from engineering. So that's kind of the importance of this position. And when you look at it in terms of the three criteria for ranking the positions, the second criteria was, assist with the revenue of the municipality. So, hurrying up the applications to get them towards final approval. Not only does it help the bottom line for the developers, but it also creates those lots sooner so that we can achieve taxation revenue, which is our main revenue source. I think I've gone beyond the answering your question.
Follow on?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the answer. But all that being said, we still don't collect then the development fee until the plan of subdivision is registered. Is that correct? Or am I misunderstanding? Thank you.
Director Herron?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin and to Councillor Moore. As yet, the staff have not devised a program for the collection of the engineering fee. We have assessed the program in other municipalities, and there are different constructs. But typically, the fee is paid at the same time as a planning application is paid. So the municipality would receive that fee upfront. And in terms of different constructs, typically the fee is based on a percentage of what the estimated cost of installing the infrastructure on the lands. And that amount could vary. So for instance, the large municipalities in the province like Toronto and Hamilton, they charge a flat fee of between 5 and 10% right off the top to supplement their engineering review. Other smaller municipalities have varied programs. For instance, Wasaga Beach, they take a fee based on the estimate of what it's going to cost to build out the plan as proposed when it walks in the door. But they only take a portion to get through the planning process. So they take a total of 5%. They'll take 2% up front, and that gets the work done through the OPA ZBA. Then they'll take another 2% when they're going through the review of the engineering design work. When they get past that, then they know the actual cost and they'll get an adjustment on what the 5% really is. Usually it goes up. And then they'll take the 1% at the very end when they're doing the field investigation to certify that the work was done properly. So there are different models on the application of the fee. It's something that staff are currently investigating and hope to report back to council with should this position be advanced.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through the chair to CO Schmidt. So I see here 0 impact to tax. And from a previous conversation, you had said that if that ever changed, it would have to come back to council. So I see this as a 0 risk to taxpayers as it's funded from other sources. So I see no point in not approving this and seeing it go forward.
Not seeing anything further from council or staff. So we've had this moved in second. It's program change 5.6. The development engineering technologist be referred to the November 7th, 2024 special budget meeting for further consideration. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. We're now moving on to 5.7. May I have a mover and seconder for our program, the mover and seconder for the program change public support assistant from part-time to full-time. Councillors Thompson and Deputy Cabral. That program change public works support assistant be referred to the November 27th special budget meeting for further consideration. And at this time, I can open it up to council for comments and questions. Not seeing any, I will turn to CO Schmidt maybe again for an overview of the position and the request.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. So again, yeah, we're looking at basically converting a current permanent part-time position to a permanent full-time position. So equates to basically an additional 11 hours per week. The current position was filled on a permanent basis, permanent part-time basis in June of 2022. And as I mentioned earlier, the department is the largest within the organization. And from a staffing perspective, it plays a vital role in providing key municipal services to our residents. The department, as I mentioned, has a director and 3 managers, which this position currently provides administrative support for. So in addition to that, key responsibilities of this position is plays a key role in serving as the primary contact, point of contact for the Public Works Department, provides frontline support, so whether it's telephone, email, front counter support for inquiries related to roads, water, wastewater, stormwater, and capital projects, assists with administrative tasks, including drafting, circulating, and filing reports and notices, schedules Aqua and WAMCO service calls for our residents, and provides coverage for our EA to the mayor, council, and myself when they're out of the office. So with the introduction of this position, it has alleviated pressure on technical staff in the Public Works Department and allows them to focus on work aligned within their areas of expertise. That said, with the current limited hours of this position has led to some gaps with information flow in the department across the organization and to the public. When this position is unavailable, calls are frequently forwarded directly to voicemail, as other operations staff are often out on site visits. This can cause frustrations, obviously, for our residents that are unable to directly communicate their concerns or have their inquiries answered with a live person. By transitioning this position from permanent part-time to permanent full-time would offer a more comprehensive level of service by providing consistent availability during work hours, higher and enhanced level of service to our residents, reduction in reliance on voicemail and subsequent delays, greater satisfaction and communication with residents, and enhanced ability to address urgent issues promptly. Public Works Department is responsible for delivering on a significant capital program, as mentioned earlier, and ensuring that our residents are kept apprised of the status of these projects. Transitioning this position to full-time hours would allow staff to concentrate more fully on our communication related to capital projects in consultation with our corporate communications team. This would significantly alleviate frustrations from residents and elevate overall project delivery outcomes. Expanding staff coverage to full-time can significantly enhance responsiveness to community needs. And this position, as mentioned earlier, does come at a proposed investment of approximately $20,000, and that is the annualized increase. Happy to answer further questions, Mayor Coggan.
Not seeing any comments or questions further. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. We'll now move on to 5.8. May I have a mover and seconder for the program change equipment operator, please? Thank you. I do require a seconder. So Deputy Cabral and Councillor Garwood, that program change equipment operator be referred to the November 27th special budget meeting for further consideration. Council, this time, are there any comments or questions on the equipment operator program change? Councillor Alexander?
Okay, and sorry if I'm on the wrong one because I didn't reorg my positions to the prioritize, so I'm a bit all over the map here. I'm assuming this is the public work one? Okay. What's the difference in this poll versus the 2 operators we approved 2 years ago?
CEO Schmidt?
Through you, Mayor Coggan, to Councillor Alexander. Trying to remember the 2 positions that were approved a couple of years ago. I guess how I'll answer the question is that, so there are 2 equipment operators positions in the program change list. And obviously subsequent to the direction provided by council, staff did separate the 2 with the notion that, we would love both, but one could definitely assist us. So if I can, and maybe provide a little bit more oversight. So Township does currently own and maintain approximately 864 lane kilometers of public highway and 46 kilometers of sidewalk. In addition, the Township's 2024 asset management plan identified a replacement value of our road infrastructure in the amount of over $600 million. The Township is required to comply with OREG 239-02 minimum maintenance standards as relates to our road infrastructure. And as a result of new development, the township's road and sidewalk network for 2024-2025 has increased by approximately 20 kilometers of new roads and 6 kilometers of new sidewalk. Just a little bit on the department. So the department has a permanent full-time staff complement of 6 equipment operators and 6 truck driver laborers who deliver winter and summer maintenance operations on behalf of the municipality. Although the township hires seasonal staff to assist with the provision of winter maintenance or winter operations, with the increased growth and additional subdivisions being assumed by the township, there is a need for additional permanent full-time staff to complete maintenance activities year-round, such as ditching, gravel, hardtop road maintenance, crack sealing, storm pond maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, the list goes on. With the current staff complement, each operator truck driver is responsible for plowing on average 35 kilometers per plow route, and each plow route takes approximately 10 hours to complete. With the addition of a new equipment operator, this would assist in reducing the average plow route to approximately 30 kilometers and driving time to approximately 8 hours. During severe snow weather events, staff are required to suspend plow operations after 13 hours of operation and are not able to recommence plowing until they've had at least 10 hours of rest. With the addition of a new equipment operator, this would assist in ensuring for the health and safety and well-being of our staff. And then during the summer and shoulder months, the new equipment operator would provide for better daily assignment coverage and continuity. Some of the major tasks that they would assist with is graveling and regrading of gravel roads prior to surface treatment, increasing ditching efforts, hot mix patching and pothole repair, roadside shouldering, grass cutting, and storm damage response. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I think too, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but I think what we're speaking to is in the first year of this term, council was asked to hire 2 operators outside the budget term, which was reactionary to the request, or I didn't say unfortunate, the demands of the union that was put in place, which took 2 operator positions, 2 people who used to be able to operate and push them into managers, one at the north yard, one at the south yard, and then prevented those 2 positions from being able to take work away from operators. So basically we were left with 2 voids in the north and 1 in the south. So we were then backfilling that. So those positions that we filled 2 years ago were due to reorganization due to the union, whereas these positions that were being requested now are due to growth. CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. That's correct. And thank you for that. So yes, back in 2021, 2022, when the union came on board, we had 2 4-persons that essentially, due to the union, they aren't able to actually take on unionized work unless there's criteria where there's exceptions, if you will. But for the most part, those 2 positions were created because the 2 4-person were no longer able to conduct union responsibilities.
Councilor Alexander and then Deputy Cabral.
And yes, Mayor Coughlin, you are right. That's what I was thinking of, was back in that first budget with those. My understanding, and again, I could be mistaken, but was that we were hiring those 2 positions so the 4-persons did not have to do the work, not because they physically could not do it, but because their role was a different role now. So they weren't backfilling. So it was still 2 additional positions. And I understand it was a result of a union situation, but the work was getting done. It was just getting done by the 4-person, which may not be ideal.
I'm good. And I do apologize, and I'm not, again, trying to be adversarial here. So the expectation of the union, it's not that that our 4-person were choosing not to do it. If a 4-person does move into a union job and script, they're just not allowed to do it. Like they're just not in compliance with the expectations of their role. So it wasn't that we were moving them outside of a position. They were no longer permitted to take the work away from unionized employees because our 4-persons are not unionized. CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. Yes, there's provisions within the collective agreement that essentially unionized work is for unionized employees. There are a couple exceptions where our 4-persons could potentially assist, but again, those are exception based only. So it is, again, collective agreement essentially dictates the responsibilities of our unionized staff, which our 4 persons are not permitted to undertake unless they fall within one of these provisions, if you will.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I guess my question revolves around the work that was done over the course of the summer in respect of ditching, where we're contracting out ditching to a firm that used a grade all. And I guess my thought was, are we going to be stopping doing that and looking after the ditching on our own again come next year if these individuals are hired, or are these going to just simply be hired and then augmented going forward? And we're going to continue to contract out our ditching. So I guess that's my question.
Manager Ha?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to the deputy mayor. This will assist in all of our operations. I wouldn't say that we're necessarily, yes, we contracted out ditching to a grade all service, far more efficient for larger projects, those kind of things, but we still did a lot of ditching with our own forces in-house. This would assist with that, to assist with everything that we do. So it would likely decrease a little bit of contract stuff and do a little more in-house, but just balancing the services on both ends.
Follow on?
Yeah, I guess for me, sometimes when we're contracting out services, depending on what the services are, sometimes it takes away our own staff from being in a position to provide that service. So it kind of makes you wonder if you've got, managers, 4 persons, lead hands, that kind of stuff that would have normally been doing that work, and now it's been contracted out. It'd be nice to be able to have some kind of an idea, because when you come and ask, and I'm not saying you, but when an ask is made for additional staff and, not only residents, but I see it too, when we have contractors out there doing things that we used to do on our own, it makes me wonder then, did we need an extra supervisor that year if we're going to be contracting out a substantial amount of work? We used to have the cutting back of brush done by contract. I know that we do that. Some of it are on our own. I don't know if we also contract out because it's lengthy, but prior to that, we used to contract it all out. So that's kind of where I'm going with this is, are we going to kind of shift back to what we were doing before, or from what I'm hearing, it's still going to be this kind of a hybrid system?
Manager Ha?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. It would depend on the situation. Part of the reason that we do contract out some services is sometimes a contractor is more efficient. We still have staff on site. We put our own trucks under the grade all of as a good example. But sometimes those people they can clear more ditch in a time frame than we can, just because they live in that machine all the time. That being said, we still do a bunch of it in-house. One thing that we have added this winter is we've added another plow route with roads that we've taken on in the last number of years. So again, that's being filled with a seasonal person now, but the forecast is we're going to continue to take on more and more roads. So hence the requirement of more operators.
Thank you for that. I would love to get a phone call one day that says you are doing too much ditching in this municipality, because I continue to hear the opposite on an ongoing basis. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Just curious about the sidewalk plowing, because we will have a lot more sidewalks. Is that something that you've looked at, contracting out just the sidewalk portion of the snow removal?
Manager Ha?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through to Councillor Moore. Something that's been on my mind. We haven't looked into contracting. So far, we are able to manage what we have and what we've taken on currently this year. But certainly something that we may have to look to in the future, just given the cost of the Of sidewalk machines, they're a high capital purchase, so it may be something that we move to in the future where we do again, similar to the ditching, a bit of a hybrid. I do like to keep some things where we have some expertise in-house, even though we contract some of that out. So we have a good comparator that we keep the contractors competitive.
Yeah, and I think too, it's important that when new houses pop up, residents assume that these roads and these sidewalks are all responsibility of the municipality immediately. So I think that we do have approximately 2 to 3 years before assumption, whereby we know how many while they're still, at this point, for example, our new subdivisions are assumed and the developer is responsible for the snow clearing of the sidewalks and the roads until we assume them. So we do have a window where we can assess and determine whether we're going to contract out or hire new at that time, CO Schmidt or Manager Ha.
Through you, Mayor Coggan, just to clarify, so the township does actually clear snow, roads as well as sidewalks in unassumed subdivisions where we bill back the developer for it. So it's not just based on unassumed roads. I'm not sure if Manager Ha had anything further to add on that.
Manager Ha?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Yeah, to the CIO's point, yes, that is correct. There are developments that we do plow snow in. Some of them, the Midhurst Heights, for a good example, there were people living in there last year and the developer looked after it. We've now are taking that on for this winter and we'll build back to the developer.
Thank you for that. Not seeing anything further on this, council. I do have it moved in second. This is program change 5.8. Equipment operator be referred to the November 27th special budget for further consideration. All those in favor? Sorry, I'm going to need all those in favor. And that has carried. Moving on to 5.9, and this is operator 1. May I have a mover and seconder for this program change, please? Councillor Fisher. And a second, Councillor Thompson. That program change RFP operator 1 be referred to the November 27th, 2024 special budget for further consideration. Any comments or questions on this position? I do believe that in a previous, we had a good overview of what operator 1 and what operator 2 are. If there's any further clarification. Not seeing any. All those in favor? That position is defeated. Moving on to item 5.10. I have a mover and seconder for the economic development officer, please. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Garwood, that the program change economic development officer be referred to November 27th, special budget meeting for further consideration. And at this time, I can open it up to the floor for comments or questions. Councillor Garwood and Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. More of a comment than a question specifically, understanding that this position, I believe, has now been in front of us for 3 budgets in a row. I have supported this position each year, understanding the importance of what it brings to our municipality, but to specifically focus on the economic development strategy. I know that was something that was brought forth to this table as a discussion a little over 6 months ago. Our current economic development strategy was last renewed in 2010, so almost 15 years old. This position would significantly work towards updating that strategy. Of course, bringing it specifically to the ward that I represent, the economic development officer would have a significant liaison relationship with the Elmville BIA. Currently, the Elmville BIA does not have a township liaison or staff member assigned or associated to that board. Working with the business community, I've specifically heard, again, some folks that have come in to the Springwater community who have opened up shop from other areas, have asked which resource and who they can work with through the municipality, and they're often shocked to hear that one does not exist. Also comparing ourselves to other municipalities within the county of Simcoe, understanding that this specific position would have a significant connection to the county's economic development team. I believe it was last year, Councillor Thompson and I had an opportunity to meet with county staff and speak to their economic development team around what they do, what they offer for communities, and don't quote me on the specifics, but I was surprised to hear that we're one of the only municipalities in the county without an economic development officer. Last year at Roma, I also had the opportunity of sitting in on a economic development session and hearing about municipalities significantly smaller than ours, with significant further disadvantages to neighboring communities, resources, schools, etc., that brought in a team that had an ec dev focus and completely turned around some of their communities. So I found that fascinating. I'd really truly hope to see that this position, again, one that I've advocated now for 3 years, does move forward in the budget.
Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I've struggled with this one. I've supported it the first time around, and then we had to pull it with issues with our fee structure from Parks and Rec. It was a reconsideration, but it was approved in the original budget from 2022. 2023, I found the position completely morphed into a bit of a community liaison. It was a different job description, so I wasn't able to support it at that point. I would just like Director Heron to speak to a bit to the position, because when I had the opportunity to meet with him on this position, he had some very good thoughts, and I was very intrigued in how he sees this position moving forward. So Director Heron?
Director Heron?
Thank you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Alexander and to Council. At the outset, the position would be a liaison to the BIA and other BIAs should they be formed. It's part of the job description as it's currently created. In terms of the criteria for the ranking, the position is directly related to increasing the revenue of the organization, but it should be understood that it will take a number of years to build a program to realize those returns in terms of successful growth of business in the township. The two key goals of this position would be to champion small business. That's goal number one. And goal number two would be to bring new investment and new business to the municipality. If you break those two criteria down, I'm trying really hard not to use my hands to describe this. I have a strong background in French, but at the granular level, in terms of championing local business, it would be, don't quote me on these numbers because they are generalist numbers, but typically in most municipalities, small business of less than 20 employees represent 80% or more of the business in a municipality. And the larger businesses, it's an 80-20 split on average. We don't know exactly what that split is here. So I think that in terms of deliverables at the granular level for small business, given that we don't have a business licensing bylaw, we really don't have a good understanding or a database of what businesses exist. So one of the first objectives would be to go out and knock on doors and shake hands and let those businesses know first that we do have an economic development department. It would be a labor intensive exercise, but in doing that, we would basically be soliciting, what are your difficulties as a small business and what are your goals to grow? And from that, I would expect that over the next year or two, we would be able to build programs to help those individuals. And I'll say that it's not true of this, but last Wednesday at council, we had a gentleman come to council and ask for help at a small business level. So we do understand that there is a need out there. And it's establishing what exactly is that need. How can we target those needs? So at a higher tier, in-house here, we do have some long-term strategic goals that are installed and instilled into our community 20-year plan. There are multiple goals about economic development and economic growth that would be directly related to this position. At a higher tier, again, that position would be charged with going out and creating connections at a regional level. So, for instance, Councillor Garwood just kindly mentioned discussions that he and Councillor Fisher had with the county. They have a strong staff of 5 economic development officers, and they have quite a distinct and robust economic development program that provides assistance to municipalities. So, one of the first level things to do with this new position would be to reach out and create that connection. And then higher than that, in terms of bringing new business to the municipality, there's the element of creating an updated economic development plan. And in that plan, what I would be looking for is what are the specific industries that we can go out and solicit to bring here that would be successful? And that would be based on strengths and weaknesses of the township. And then higher again, that position would be charged with going out and making connections with the Ministry of Industry, Ministers of Tourism at both the provincial and federal level, and getting to know their staff so that we would have higher connectivity to grant monies to serve that lower tier at the local level. The types of programs that are likely needed, but we don't know this yet, are how to use the international web or how to create a web to serve your business, to expand your business, to expand your capture. How to do basic accounting. There are, I made a quick list and then I'm going to stop. But there are a quick list. We don't have a land inventory of what lands are available for employment use. We get regular requests from the ministries of staff from ministries of industry saying, hey, we have a developer, they're from overseas, they're looking for a block of land, they need 40 hectares, it's got to be close to the 400 series, and they give us some criteria. Right now, staff are scrambling. It takes us 3 to 4 days to pull together a package because we just don't have the resources to do it, but we do it. Having an EDO in-house, we should be able to turn that around in an afternoon. And that's critical because typically these requests, they act quickly on them. And then there's also, council has authorized staff to go out and perform a growth strategy, which is just about to commence. And the EDO would be a strong input into that growth strategy and determining where are the priority lands for employment, and assist the planners in that way in putting together a completely functional growth plan that we would eventually build into the official plan so that it would all dovetail together as we learn and grow. So I'm trying to give you what the deliverables would be over time, what the expectation would be. It is an entry-level wage. I think it's, bear with me, 86,490 for 2005 and 95,009 for 2006. I have no objection to the entry level. I think that given that we have very good resources at the county, if we get somebody with 2 or 4 years of experience, that would serve us well.
I have Councillor Moore, Fisher, Thompson. Apologies, unless there's a follow on. Sorry, just no. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Director Heron. Thank you for bringing this position forward once again. I have not supported it, though, the last couple of times that it was presented. This year, it's different in a way that we've just spent an enormous amount of money on a consultant, which has yet to commence, which, as you alluded to, will commence soon. That will look at the economic growth and sort of viability as part of our committee that was formed as well. So I'm wondering, though, if it would be best served if we waited until we had some information back from that consultant before we assume that this position is going to be sort of dovetailing, like you said, into a way that really benefits the township. So I think the position is important, but I also feel like the consultant's report is equally, if not more important. Thank you.
Director Herron?
Thank you, Your Worship, and Councillor Moore. I think the comment I made earlier on that the sooner the township endeavors to hire an EDO and start creating programs to grow our economy, the sooner we'll gain traction on that economy. The council certainly has the authority to defer for another year. We do see on this priorities list that the EDO is further down the list, and that's just a reflection of the pressures that we're seeing in other departments. So I think that the consideration of council on that question would be how soon does council want to see traction to begin to grow the economy and adjust our tax base so that it's less residential heavy and a little stronger on the commercial industrial side.
Councilor Fisher?
I'd actually be in full support of this position, probably 4 or 5 years from now. I think that I think it's vital for a lot of communities to bring in, small, medium, and even large businesses, if they have, if they have something to offer. And you mentioned land inventory. I think you're absolutely right. We need to take a look at our land inventory and see what commercial and industrial lands we can offer. I think we need to also see what's going on with our situation with our neighbors to the south. So right now, I can't support yet again $100,000 position that essentially by admission is probably for the next few years a liaison with the BIA. Once again, I think long term, this has some real viability in some form. I don't think the form that is coming forward or has come forward with, but certainly in time, I think that this could be an individual who goes out and courts businesses to come in and add employment. But I think at this particular time, given what we have, I think it's once again, it's a bit premature. I also don't like the inception of it and it being transitional. I think we know exactly what we're getting into. We have the right lands, we have the right services. We know exactly who we're targeting and who we're offering industrial, commercial land to, what we're looking at in terms of employment. And we hire for that, not a transitional person who works with the BIA now, but transitions into something else. So I see it a bit differently, but certainly I see $100,000 price tag on it. So once again, I won't support it.
Thank you. Director Herron, can you speak to the amount of the capacity of this position that would be working directly with the BIA? I understand that we have one BIA in our municipality and it encompasses, I haven't sat on it in a few terms. I'm going to throw out a number 20 businesses, maybe. No, oh, hang on. Anyway, I will go to the people that actually know what they're talking about, but this position doesn't just solely work with the businesses affiliated with the Elmvale BIA. This works across our entire township, working with every small business that we have to build them up and to retain them and to help them grow. So I'm just curious, this isn't a BIA liaison that we're looking to hire, that would just be simply their once a month responsibility to attend the meetings and assist. Director Herron?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. That is correct. Being a liaison to the BIA would be a significantly smaller portion of the duties the position would be responsible for. It is an important position because the Elmvale BIA are effective. So it's important to support that BIA. But the position of the EDO truly would be there to help all businesses in the township. And that's part of the reasoning for my suggestion that they start knocking on doors right from the get-go and do it systematically, because there are businesses in Minising, there are businesses all around. Some of them we don't even know about. So the role of that individual in both creating healthy local business across the township would be significantly more important than the role of attending and being a liaison at the BIA. And it's important to note that I'm going to be colloquial here. Township staff have been doing a lot more work for the BAA than really we should have been. We've been doing their secretarial work. We've been doing their agenda management work, which is not the role of an advisor to the committee. That role, those duties should belong with the BIA, so they're self-managing. The advisor role is to be there as a connection between the BIA and the municipality, so that we can understand where they're going with their goals and help them where we can, or even and guide them. And it's kind of the similar role as we discussed earlier with the CRAs. Did I get the acronym right? Thank you. Very, very, very similar, because they have their own ideas and they have their own energy, and it's really important to support them, and that would be the advisor role. But critically more important, as you mentioned, Mayor Coughlin, is to support local businesses and help them be healthy and help them survive in tough economic times. There are different things that can occur. For instance, putting out an economic development newsletter once a month. And in that newsletter, say, the county's putting on a course on how to enhance your business, or they're putting on a course where it's mentorship programs. If there are similar businesses, they'll hook you up with other businesses. So that's the importance of the EDO role. It's a connector, an integrator, and it brings all those strengths to the municipality that we're currently not doing for our local businesses.
Thank you for that. Before I do go to Councillor Thompson, I'm sure Councillor Carr would like to correct me on my number.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The BIA right now is working with roughly, it does fluctuate, but roughly 100 businesses. And that includes associate membership as well to the Elmvale BIA. And just in the past 4 months, Elmvale has seen 7 new small businesses either open up or will be opening soon.
My apologies for counting businesses on the main street. I had no idea it was that large. Thank you for that. Follow on, Councillor Fisher, and then Councillor Thompson.
So you had 7 new businesses come in when we don't have an economic development officer.
I'm not going to get back and forth between imagine what we could do if we had an EDO and why do we need one if 7's good enough. So we will leave it at that. Those are, thank you for that update, and Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So through the chair to Director Heron. So last year when we looked at this position and we're looking for the justification, we'd identified over $500,000 in funding opportunities from the province and from the county. In fact, we had secured a $50,000 grant from the county. Could you tell me the status of that grant and whether it's still available to us or not, or whether that's a missed opportunity for this council, and whether there are still other funding opportunities outside of taxation that could support this position?
Director Heron.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and to Councillor Thompson. This, I think it was $50,000. It was a grant to update the economic development strategy. That grant had been deferred because there was no capacity to action it and commence the strategy. My understanding is, this is prehistory for me, but my understanding is that the township asked for an extension to the county. They did receive one. The township asked for a second extension and it was not granted. The money was refunded to the county. So we no longer have it in our accounts for use. To the second question, are there other available grants? I would suggest yes. I do not have a list that I can provide to council at this very moment. But part of the rationale for building those connections with RTO7, with TIO, TIAO, both of them are tourism development arms of the provincial government, and they continuously have programs available for tourism growth, which happens to be one of the goals. I think it's goal number 3 under economic development in the 20-year strategic plan, to develop a tourism industry in the township. So yes, there are grants available. Part of the role of the EDO would be to go out and source out those grants. We would be a lot more successful having connections with municipal staff, or sorry, with provincial staff that manage those grant systems. And right now, we just, staff doesn't have the ability to do that reach out.
Owen?
Thank you. So just so I'm clear, is that the county had deemed this position important enough that they were willing to pay for more than half of it for our township. And because we didn't deem it important enough, we've had to refund that $50,000 to the county.
I think the clarification on that, it wasn't specific to the position. It was assuming we already had the position and they were going to update our study. So that it wasn't, the county is not funding municipal staff. They were funding subsequent, yes, whoever was going to actually do the work on the update, but we didn't have an EDO, so we had to return it. So anything further on this? Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And just also speaking to a benefit that I see this role taking on, the township has the community improvement project that is available for businesses. And I'll let Director Heron correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's open to all businesses within the municipality, not just that fall within the BIA area. And this is from available grants and funding for businesses on facade improvements, signage improvements, building restoration, planning and building permit fee rebate, development charge rebate. I'm not going to keep going down the list, but these opportunities that exist that our businesses do not know exist. They have no idea they exist. Until we go door to door, which we have done in Elmville, just as an example. But that's because our community in Elmville has a BIA, and not every business community within this municipality has that same organization associated with it, where this position can take on tasks like that. I'm making an assumption. I'm not, I'm assuming that would be part of that position. So anyway, just speaking again to the options and the supports that exist, that Springwater has been forward thinking on. This was a bylaw that council in 2017 implemented specifically for the business community. And I would make an assumption that it's been underutilized, to say the least.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Director Heron. Director Heron, given the tax burden pressures that we're facing right now and the amount that would be required for this, is this something that's critical enough that we need to press forward with it for 2024, or is this something that we could pencil in for 2025?
Just say yes. We're actually dealing with the 2025 budget. So yes, we could pencil it in. Director Heron?
That is, thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and to the Deputy Mayor Cabral. That is actually the question I was hoping would not be asked, because it's a very difficult question. In my opinion, having developed a program like this for another municipality and having seen its success, I would suggest to council that it is needed sooner rather than later. Having said that, I have tremendous respect for council's responsibility and what you're facing in terms of this budget. So the flip side of the coin is, could council consider deferring it to next year? I would have to say absolutely you could. And again, I go back to the original answer that I provided to Councillor Moore's question in terms of how soon does council want to see traction in terms of developing a healthy and robust economy in the township. The interesting facet here is that the township is going to directly benefit from the economic monster that is right next door. So the sooner we can gain that traction, the sooner we can get development on our development lands. We have in our boundaries access to all of Highway 26 from one boundary all the way to another. We have direct access with interchange to Highway 400. So we are significantly well placed as a municipality to benefit from this burgeoning market beside us. And we all understand some of the discussions that are happening because of that burgeoning market. So taking advantage of economic development strategies, not just for the local business, but to establish a framework for inciting and inviting new business into the municipality, I would say the potential is high for success just because of the factors that we enjoy. It's just a matter of putting some effort into it.
Thank you for that. And I think too, what's happening all around us, the excitement in new tech and the excitement that's going to happen in Oro-Medonte with the expansion of the airport and everything that's going to happen around there, I think that we need to be ready for it. And I think that if we're not ready for it, it'll be another missed opportunity for us. So, council, if there's anything further, not seeing any, all those in favor? And that has carried. Moving on to 511, may I have a mover and seconder for the equipment operator program change, please? I need a mover and seconder to have discussion on this. Councillor Moore and Councillor Garwood. That program change equipment operator be referred to the November 27th special budget meeting for further consideration. And at this time, I'll open it up to the floor. Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that is defeated. May I have a mover and seconder for program change 512. This is for operator 1. That program change RFP operator 1 be referred to the November 27th, 2024 special meeting for further consideration. And I need a mover and seconder again for this to have a conversation. Councillor Moore and Councillor Garwood. Any comments or questions on this position? All those in favor? And that is defeated. Moving on to our junior financial analyst, program change 5.13. Council, I need a mover and seconder to have this moved, please. Councillor Fisher, Councillor Alexander. That program change junior financial analyst be referred to the November 27th special budget meeting for further consideration. Comments or questions on this position? Councillor Fisher and Councillor Thompson.
I'm going to support it just because I'd like to see further consideration of it before we say no.
Councillor Thompson.
Through the chair, Director Bedard, I know you spoke of this kind of earlier. Could you just kind of refresh us again? Refresh me.
Director Bedard.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Thompson. Hopefully my speaking notes haven't left me. So this junior financial analyst position is really to support the back end financial integrity of the municipality. Some of the points I spoke to earlier was help with accounts receivable. So we issue close to 1,000 invoices on an annual basis, and to collect upon the ones that were unsuccessful, we need that routine issuance of past due notices. This position will help with that process. This position will, because we'll be taking over accounts receivable, it will be building capacity within our accounts payable team. As our accounts payable increases in line with the township's budget, there's more pressure on ensuring our vendors are paid in a timely manner in line with the provisions or the payment provisions of their invoice. So as our budget grows, we process more invoices. We need additional capacity to process those invoices. So this position will build capacity on the accounts payable side. And the portion of the position that I'm most excited about is that it will build capacity for internal and external financial reporting. As I mentioned before, we're not very good at reporting to council our quarterly financial updates. And, you know, I've been here 6 months and that's a failure on my part. You haven't seen a report from myself within the first 6 months of my tenure here. And that is information that should flow from, you know, staff to council. As the decision makers, you need to know our financial position so that you can make decisions accordingly. So this position will help with our month-end, quarter-end, year-end processes to ensure that we can process that information in a timely manner at the staff level. In turn, we can provide that information to senior leadership and council so that you're making well-informed financial decisions. With the growth in the township, and we'll be looking to issue external debt to fund some of our capital projects, you know, the 2 generational projects that we have ongoing. Up-to-date financial reporting will be critical to ensure both we keep the province happy in terms of meeting our requirements for such funding, such as our OMPF or OSIF, and also it'll be critical to ensure that the potential lenders will have up-to-date financials with respect to monitoring credit risk of the township. So in summary, I think it's a very useful back-end position for the finance department. You know, when I look at the finance department, I wish finance department was 1 and 2. But as Director Heron had mentioned, you know, we look at the needs of the township. And while this position in my mind is very critical, it fell to 13 on the priority listing.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson? Anything further on this position, council? All those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to program change 1.4. May I have a mover and seconder to refer the program change for the coordinator of culture and events. Councillor Garwood. Councillor Thompson. It's on the floor for discussion, council. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Director Culver. Understanding that the manager of Rec and Culture did not move forward, can you speak to a potential proposed, I guess, reporting structure in regards to, I'm assuming this position, the coordinator position, in a perfect world, if both positions were approved, would report into the manager position. So would this take on some of the responsibilities or some of the work that one position would have, understanding the rec piece is not a part of it?
Director Culver.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Garwood. I think the best way I'll respond is I'll read the justification notes that I've written for the position. I think the question is valid. However, I think the merits of the position stand on their own as well. So I'll just read the justification if I could, please. The Township of Springwater has, through actions and investments, indicated a desire to provide services and supports related to events and culture. However, the staff resources to provide these supports have been co-opted from other existing roles, which apply significant pressure to the capacity of existing roles. Currently, events in Springwater are a mixture of third-party, CRA-based, township-operated, and corporate. While there are no resources committed by design, each of these requires significant involvement by staff to proceed successfully and protect the interests of the township. The township has reached a critical mass of events where an event permitting policy should be developed, approved by council, and implemented. The implementation of this policy will also provide opportunities to seek out and expand the township's supports for third-party events in coordination with the economic development interests of the corporation. The township invested in a 2012 culture plan, which has unfortunately seen few of the recommendations developed and executed due to lack of resources. There is a sizable community of arts and culture within the township, however, it remains fairly hidden and unsupported by the township. Arts and culture are an important part of a community that seeks to support and inspire its members. A sense of pride and a sense of place and belonging are both common outcomes of a community that embraces and invests in support of these community interests. It is noted that despite a broad awareness of musical artists, visual artists, and other performing artists within the Springwater area, the township struggles to connect and maintain relationships with this sector. Further, while the township has experienced a significant growth in diversity, as well as recognizing the importance of the Indigenous origin of the lands we call home, a commitment to programs and education to support these ongoing efforts is currently lacking. As Springwater continues to evolve, resources are needed to match the changes that are being asked of the township service departments. Thank you.
And Director Culver, if you could just speak to the reporting, should this position move forward, where would it fall within the current structure of the organization?
So the original intention was that it would report to the manager of Recreation and Culture. However, we'd have to revisit that obviously if council saw fit to move forward with.
Thank you. Fisher.
Thank you for the description. Unfortunately, I think when we're staring down a budget of this magnitude, unfortunately, this, in my opinion, this position is a luxury that we just can't afford right now. So it sounds great, but I can't support it.
Anything further, council? All those in favor? And that position's defeated. We'll move on to our last program change for the evening. May I have a mover and seconder for the EDHS Recreation Program staff? I have Councilors Alexander and Garwood. That program change EDHS program staff be referred to the November 27th special budget meeting for further consideration. And I will turn back to Director Culver.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. Rather than be long-winded, I'll just say this is an expansion of hours to support growth of programming at EDHS for members of the community.
Thank you for that. I think that the program itself has been fun to attend. I'll go to the mover and the seconder before I add mine. Councilor Alexander, then Councilor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. Sorry. It's gonna be gone by the end of the night. I appreciate the breakdown of hours. Do we have an idea? Is that gonna be like an extra day a week and not like a full day? I know we don't do full days, but like an extra, have we thought about what that actually will entail with having gym open with programming?
Instead of Director Dean, I'll go to Manager Dean.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to council and Councilor Alexander. So that actually would establish, now that we've been working with EDHS, have programming in there and have a set schedule and days, that would establish the true hours required for the programming that is currently being run in the facility.
This is no expansion to the hours that are currently existing. This is right sizing.
So with EDHS, as we have been working to build that program over the last couple of years, so there's some contracted programming, there's drop-in programming in there. So that would truly establish having the individuals in this facility, so programmers, attendants in the facility for the full programming for the Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Saturdays in the facility.
I'm just gonna keep going. I'm working with people long enough to kind of figure out. So if we don't do this, this is another something that will be removed from a level of service. So either we do this and it stays at the level that it is. I guess the question is, how has it been happening to this point, and why do we require this position to continue with what the existing level of service is?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So when this program was being established, there was a thought of contracted staff, drop-in staff. So as we've been working with council and EDHS through getting the programming going, the desire is for drop-in programming more than contracted programming. So to run the desired level of drop-in programming, which is staff-led as opposed to contractor-led, it would be having staffing hours, part-time staffing hours in there as opposed to contracted out staffing hours in there.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Alexander.
Okay, sorry, we're beating a dead horse here, but I just want to make sure I do understand. So it would be like, and I'm just throwing this out there, potentially removing a fitness class or something we've contracted out, and instead in those hours we do more pickleball or volleyball. Is that what I'm hearing?
Manager Dean?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so it would be looking to not necessarily always having, yes, contracted fitness instructors, contracted children's programs and et cetera, and having drop-in, which can still have fee components to it and it could still have register components to it. What would it be looking at having part-time township staff in those positions? So not full-time staff, still part-time staff in those positions in that facility.
Thank you. Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Manager Dean. So then speaking to that, understanding right now the current structure with the Tuesday and the Wednesday evenings being that drop-in, would the staff responsibility fall, again, you mentioned programming, so would staff be supporting in planned programming, or would it still be, checking in, checking out, managing the facility more than being on a court?
Manager Dean?
Thank you. So currently those staffing levels would be for more drop-in programming. So they are there to help facilitate. They are there to oversee the facility. They do have some facility duties while in that facility too. So with that agreement, not all the kind of light duties in the facility fall to EDHS staff. Or school board staff, I should say, sorry, they fall to our staff. So they would be running not a league style, because I feel like that's going to be your next question. That would require further staffing, that would require reffing, that does require like a true programmer to kind of oversee the brackets, the reffing, the league coordination and such of that, because I think maybe that's where that was going.
Like you've been working with them too. Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. It's like I've asked you that question a few times. Okay, so then further to that, then within the project justification where it says the request is for an addition of 864 hours annually to support recreation programs, it wouldn't be an expansion in hours from the existing 3 hours on Tuesday, 3 on Wednesday, whatever it is, and a couple on Saturday. It's really just more of a realignment of those existing hours and the responsibilities associated. Would I be understanding that correctly?
Manager Dean?
Thank you, Councillor Garwood. Yes, that is correct.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you. I think I'm getting this right. So basically, what it sounds like to me is we're going to stop contracted recreational things that are going on, and then we're going to have our own staff there for drop-in. And based on that, I'm just thinking, is there opportunity then to reduce this by actually having contracted pickleball people come in and do that for us in the same fashion they're doing it now? I guess they're charging a fee and utilizing the facility for classes. Is that correct?
Right. Would you like to see if Councillor Thompson is available for contracted pickleball lessons? I think what we've noticed is that when we put the programs out there, we kind of put a little bit of everything out there, and what the community has really picked up on and embraced is the drop-in, and it's spectacular to see people of all ages there together. And if I think that we need to continue to encourage this, and hopefully that the next time it's to expand the hours, because I did see Manager Dean and then back to Councillor Garwood.
Thank you. And just to answer a bit more to your question, Deputy Mayor Cabral, is we have over the years also reduced the budget request for contracted staff under the EDHS budget line, as we are seeing that, yes, there is some contracted programs. So for example, Monkey Nastic program, that would have a certified monkey nastic instructor. That's not their certification, but that's the program. So that we would look to contract, and we fully recover the cost of the contractor in that case. And then we have other programs that are more less of a certified program, but you can teach skill, you can teach team building and other, whether it be youth or adult in it, that can be facilitated by our staff. So sometimes it's our camp staff that stay on over and do some part-time hours throughout the year, and they guide that type of programming.
Not seeing anything. Oh, Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And not to continue on this, but again, just two items. Manager Dean, could you speak to the community benefit that's occurred so far? Understanding, I believe, sometime in the summer, I spoke to the numbers. I believe we were around 1,000 members of the community who had utilized the drop-in facility free of charge. Not expecting exact numbers or anything along those lines, but just speak to the magnitude of the success so far.
Thank you, Councillor Garwood. So I can speak generally to the numbers. We are seeing between 40 to 60 people pretty much every week for the pickleball evenings. The other evening is a split between basketball and volleyball. And again, we're seeing kind of between that 20 to 50 mark throughout the night. So we are seeing a younger age group earlier in the evening and an older age group of adults playing later in the evening time slot. Our registered programs for the youth programming on the Saturday mornings, we have been able to run almost all of those programs. We have canceled the odd one just because they haven't met the minimum requirements for the class, and then those drop-ins have been steady as well.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Manager Dean. And just more along the lines of a comment, I think transitioning to a more consistent drop-in model with the additional staffing hours associated is well worth the investment. As we can see, the numbers are definitely there from members of the community utilizing the space. I probably receive an email or a phone call weekly about an expansion of service and an additional opportunity, planned programming through the ECRA. You know, you could go down the list of how excited folks are about having this space close to home. So thank you and your staff for making it a priority, and I'm happy to support this.
Thank you. So Council, we have the program change. EDHS Recreation Program staff be referred to the November 27th special meeting for further consideration. All those in favor? And that has carried. At this time, Council, this is the council member proposed motions. So members of council may propose motions to the operating and capital budgets for the 10-year plan, such as initiative additions, deletions, and that have not been proposed during the earlier budget. First, we will deal with the proposed motions of the operating budget, followed by the proposed motions for the capital budget. Procedurally, please ensure that not only the motion is brought forward at a time, one motion is brought forward at a time to be tabled and discussed and voted. Once that motion has been voted on, we will move to the next member. So at this time, I will turn to members of council for additional proposed increases to the budget. Fantastic. Deputy Cabral.
Mayor Coughlin, I just wanted to say that seeing as the budget came in at 14.7, I want to commend council members for not incurring additional costs going forward. I'm sure it was on their mind when they decided not to put anything forward. So I just want to say thank you to council as a whole. It's tough to cut things from staff and then put things on the table for council.
Are there any motions for the capital budget or the 10-year plan? We have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw, please. Deputy Cabral.
Sorry, Mayor Coughlin, I'm going to step back. The last piece there about the capital plan, that can still be addressed come the next session, correct? We're just moving it forward to the next session.
We can. I think the intent was that we would have this meeting this evening so that staff would have a clear understanding of what our intentions were, so that numbers could be worked out. And so if there's anything to remove or add to the budget at the will of council.
Sorry.
Councillor Garwood?
Just a process question, maybe dovetailing off of what was just mentioned, but the discussion around the 14, the 12, the 10, the 8, and where we sit, that's on Wednesday, correct?
Just that way, please.
Yeah, I think just
Correct.
clarification around that would alleviate.
Theo
some
Schmidt?
concern.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So essentially, the end is this evening's conversation. Staff doesn't have anything else to present unless directed by council. So Wednesday's discussion is in your hands, how you wish to proceed. Council provided direction earlier this year, or earlier this month, with regards to the 12, 10, and 8 scenarios. Staff have not received any further direction as to how to proceed with those. So we're really in council's hands on Wednesday during that session.
May I have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw, please? Councillor Garwood, Councillor Thompson, that bylaw 2024-096 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the special meeting held on November 25th, 2024, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? And that is carried. And adjournment. Deputy Cabral, Councillor Moore, that the special meeting of the Township of Springwater is now adjourned at 8:46 PM to meet again in regular session on December 4th, 2024 at 6:30 PM. All those in favor? And that has carried.